Chapter 327. Looking at the four people surrounding her, Xianxia didn't seem to panic. She was still sitting cross-legged on the back of the David's deer. The four people looked at each other and pulled out their padao from their waist. Old Su grinned and said, "This young master, seeing that your skin is so soft and tender, I won't torture you anymore. Quickly obediently hand over all the banknotes on your body. Then I will give you a quick death. Otherwise, I will slice off all the flesh on your body." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "This hero, I heard that the heroes of the underworld rob money and don't kill people. If I give you all the money on my body, will you spare my life?" Old Su didn't speak, but the evil man next to him laughed and said, "Could it be that this guy's brain is damaged from reading too much? We have been roaming around here for many years, and we don't leave anyone alive. If we only let you go, when the government comes to arrest us tomorrow, who will we find to reason with?" The two people behind him also said, "A few days ago, there was also a scholar who talked to us about benevolence, righteousness and morality. He also advised us to turn over a new leaf. But when we cut off his finger, he kept calling us grandpa and begged us to let him go. Boy, don't tell me you also don't want to be tactless? Hurry up, before the sky is completely dark, let me give you a quick death. I can also find a place to bury you and let you have a place to rest." Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua was still calm and collected, the evil man said, "Xiao Jing, you go and help this young master on his way. We are in a hurry. Most likely, the banknotes are on his body. We will find them in a while." The people behind Zhang Xiaohua raised their padao and chopped over without hesitation. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua didn't move. He only took out an item from his bosom. It was hard to see clearly in the darkness. Moreover, the item disappeared as soon as it was taken out. Then Xiao Jing, who had raised his saber to hack at Zhang Xiaohua, fell to the ground with a putong sound. The padao also fell to the ground with a clang sound. The evil man and old Su were on the other side, so they couldn't see clearly. However, the person next to Xiao Jing clearly saw a black light fly from Zhang Xiaohua's side and hit Xiao Jing's throat. Xiao Jing immediately fell off his horse, and the black light shot towards him like lightning. The evil man was shocked and said, "What kind of sorcery is this?" Before he finished speaking, the black light was already in front of his eyes. He didn't have time to dodge and immediately fell to the ground. Seeing the two people opposite them fall from their horses, how could the evil man and old Su not know that they met a tough opponent? They immediately turned their horses around and didn't care about each other. They patted their horses and left. Zhang Xiaohua laughed at the back and said, "Since you came, why leave?" She pointed her finger. The black light changed direction and stabbed at the evil man's throat. It was the small sword in his hand. Using an immortal's flying sword to kill a bandit was really using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. The evil man didn't resist at all and immediately fell from his horse. But this delay allowed old Su to run far away. The David's deer couldn't hear Zhang Xiaohua's signal. It had already swung its hooves and directly chased after them. Unexpectedly, it wasn't the slightest bit slower than the fierce horse. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "You are really anxious. Dealing with this kind of person, are you afraid that he will run away? It's just that, since it's convenient, you can run away." Hearing this, Huan ran even faster. Not long after, it had already caught up. Zhang Xiaohua sat steadily on the back of the David's deer and said slowly, "Old Su, you have killed so many people. Don't tell me you are not afraid of retribution?" How could old Su dare to slow down his horse? While running, he begged for mercy. "Young master, I have eyes but fail to recognize Mount Tai. Today, please spare my life. I will immediately put down my butcher's knife and become a Buddha. Tomorrow, I will accumulate virtue and do good deeds. I will be a good person. What do you think?" Zhang Xiaohua said, "When you killed people, did you think about today? When you wanted to kill me just now, did you think about today? Heaven is watching. It's not that you won't get retribution, it's just that the time has not come. When the time comes, you will definitely get retribution." After saying this, Zhang Xiaohua patted the head of the David's deer again. Huan ran even faster. It had already passed old Su and went forward. Old Su was overjoyed. He immediately pulled the reins of the horse and slowly moved away from Zhang Xiaohua. He cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks to the hero for letting me go. I will go back. Tomorrow, I will open the barn to provide food to the poor. In his heart he thought, this person is really strange. Do you think this is a horse race? Once I stop, you will overtake me. Who knew that Zhang Xiaohua's leisurely words came from the front? You bastard, when did I say I will let you go? If I let you go, what will the scholar who was tortured to death by you 2 days ago think? What will the people who were killed by you all think? I have already said that it's not that you won't get retribution, it's just that the time has not come. Today is the day you will be beheaded. When old Su heard this, he did not care about anything else. He turned his horse around and ran back. Seeing that he was about to reach the foot of the mountain, he was overjoyed. Suddenly, he saw a black light rushing towards his throat. Before he could react, he felt a chill in his throat. His vision turned black and he immediately lost consciousness. Just like the 3 people before him, he fell into the dust. However, he was even more miserable. When his body fell, his feet were still in the stirrups. The horse was still running until it reached the city gate. Who knew how many sins old Su had committed? How could he still have a human form? At that time, Zhang Xiaohua naturally did not know about this. He just sat on the back of the David's deer and muttered in a low voice, "This group of people is really hateful. They don't have any manners. I just said a few words and they want to fight. This young master still wants to make them take out the banknotes in their arms first." Zhang Xiaohua, this guy, actually became addicted to being a young master. He even changed the way he addressed himself as, "this young master." The corpses of the 4 people were all discovered the next day. Seeing that the 4 people were killed with a single sword strike, the officials knew that it was a vendetta in the Jianghu. After a little investigation, they discovered that these 4 ordinary people who usually did not show themselves in Songning town were actually the murderers of many murders. This set off a huge wave in Songning town and strengthened the government's determination to clean up. In one fell swoop, several underground forces in Songning town were swept clean. This was not to say that this was not Zhang Xiaohua's good karma. And Ji Xiaohua, who knew the truth of this matter, worshipped this young man who had the same name as him as a god. Zhang Xiaohua walked along the road. They had just left Songning town and there was no inn by the side of the road. After a long journey, Zhang Xiaohua felt that Huan was tired and wanted to rest. He knew that he would definitely fall asleep at midnight. And Huan had just gotten rid of the life that did not belong to it. Its body was far from being adjusted. If he forced himself to continue on the road, he would definitely kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Seeing a mountain forest in front of him, Zhang Xiaohua made up his mind. The mountain was not high, but the trees were abnormally lush. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, he had already chosen a tree with an extremely strong crown. Patting Huan's head, he leaped up and flew to an extremely high place. He sat down cross-legged and took out a primordial stone, quietly circulating his energy to absorb primordial qi. Huan, on the other hand, let out a low hiss, extremely dissatisfied. "If you want to rest, why don't you take the sword down too? Aren't you afraid that it will tire me out if you leave it on my back?" Then, he shrugged his back and the sword fell to the ground with a clang. Afterwards, Huan slowly walked in the mountain forest in search of food. It was late at night when she came back. Zhang Xiaohua, who usually cultivated quietly on the tree crown, sniffed and lay down under the tree. In the next few days, Zhang Xiaohua and Huan traveled in the morning and slept in the night. They ate and drank when they were hungry. Oh, wrong. Only Huan ate and drank when she was thirsty. When Zhang Xiaohua saw inns, tea sheds, and the like, he only asked the waiter to serve Huan well while he only had a cup of water. Huan did not seem to be very interested in fodder and other things, but she had to force herself to eat. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and remembered it in his heart. He only needed to wait for the right fodder for Huan in the future. Huan's back was very stable and not bumpy at all. It was really different from before. Huan could even adjust its speed according to the situation on the road, so Zhang Xiaohua did not have to worry about it at all. Later on, Zhang Xiaohua no longer cared about it. He only gave Huan some pointers when there was a fork in the road. The rest of the time, he took out 2 primordial stones from his pocket and cultivated with all his might. Zhang Xiaohua knew very well that there were too many unknowns in this world. The unknown things in the magma under the deserted island and the Zhuji realm in the direction of his cultivation were all great challenges for him. If he only focused on Jianghu, it would be very difficult for him to make any progress in his cultivation. Therefore, he had already set his sights very high and seized every moment to cultivate his cultivation method. Ever since the situation in the tea house, Xianxia's bottleneck to the 6th layer of qi refining showed signs of loosening. Although he did not make any obvious progress in the past few days of painstaking cultivation, Xianxia knew very well that his cultivation was slowly accumulating. Once he reached a certain level, he would definitely be able to reach the peak of the early stage of qi refining in one fell swoop. As for formations and restrictions, Xianxia had made even more obvious progress. To be honest, when he was on the Xinrong Sect's ship, Xianxia had been able to set up a defensive restriction. He believed that he had already reached a certain limit. If he wanted to make any further progress, he would have to rely on a deeper comprehension. However, in Xiaohua's house in Songning Town, a thought came to him. He recalled the records in the jade slip and on a whim, he embedded a miniature formation into a jade pendant. This was not something that an early-stage qi refining cultivator like him could accomplish. However, with the help of the slowly revolving core in his dantian, he was actually able to create a jade pendant that could calm the mind. His spiritual sense and core seemed to have made some progress as well, so he seemed to have found another direction for his breakthrough. Although the jade blood refining core could refine the core and strengthen the spiritual sense, there was still a certain amount of danger involved. He could only cultivate in an extremely safe place. He spent his days on the road trying to comprehend the miniature formation and using some worn-out jade to practice. Although he had only been on the road for a few days, he had made great progress. On this day, it was already late and they were in the middle of nowhere. Xianxia had already gotten used to it and was preparing to find a suitable place to rest. Suddenly, he heard a voice from a concave slope ahead of him. "Thief from the Misty School, where do you think you're going?" Chapter 328. Misty School? Slipped through the net? Thief. Although the voice was soft, Xiaohua's senses were extremely sharp at this time. Although he did not release his divine sense, almost all the movements around him were under his control. When these few words were put together, they sounded like thunder in Xiaohua's ears. Although Xiaohua did not join the Misty School, ever since he left the Guozhuang house and entered Pingyang City, everything about him was closely related to the Misty School. Even the immortal skills he had were obtained from the library of the Misty School. It was impossible for him not to have deep feelings for the Misty School. At this moment, someone actually dared to call a disciple of the Misty School a thief in front of him. How could he tolerate this? Moreover, the word "slipped through the net" piqued his curiosity even more. He didn't make any movements. Instead, his figure drifted down from the back of the David's deer. Then, he straightened his body and went straight to the top of the slope. There wasn't the slightest trace of worldly affairs during the whole process. Xianxia landed on the top of the hill and blended in perfectly with the surroundings. If not for the people beside him who saw it with their own eyes, they would not have noticed or felt that someone had just appeared on the hill. Xianxia crouched on the hill and quietly poked his head out. On the other side of the hill, there was a large open space. There were 3 people dressed in martial arts attire, holding swords and padao. They surrounded a young man of about 24 or 25 years old. The young man was holding a long sword and the tip of the sword was trembling slightly. His brocade robe was already in tatters and flesh could be seen in many places, revealing blood-red wounds. The clothes around the wounds were also stained with blood. The young man was already at his limit under the siege of the 3 people, but he still did not give in. At this moment, the 3 people seemed to be interrogating him for something before they could take a break. One of them laughed and said, "Misty School boy, we've been following you for so long. We didn't expect you to see through us. Hee, you're not going to run anymore?" That person didn't answer. He only took the time to adjust his breathing and recover the internal energy he had expended. Another person sneered, "Don't waste your time. Do you think we can't tell what you're doing? Even if you have full inner strength, how can you be a match for us brothers?" The last person continued, "It's better to let him rest. In a while, he can use ethereal steps to escape from our hands and back to their nest." Hee, that's perfect. We're following behind him. Isn't it because we want to know where his lair is? Hearing their words, Xiaohua's frown deepened. What's going on? At this time, the young man from the Misty School seemed to have seen the situation clearly. He stopped adjusting his breath and lowered the tip of his sword. He smiled and said, "The rumors in Jianghu say that the Alliance of the Righteous Path is named after the righteous path. Presumably, they all say that they do things righteously and reasonably. Unlike today, they are outnumbered and have no sense of shame." Rumors in Jianghu? When the three heard this, they laughed and said, "Are you blind? How can you believe the rumors in Jianghu? Moreover, Jianghu has always respected strength. If your Misty School's strength was strong enough, the rumors in Jianghu would naturally revolve around your Misty School. How can you let others have something on you and let us destroy your entire school?" Baz! Xianxia's head was about to explode when he heard the sound. Destroy the school? Don't tell me the entire Misty School was destroyed by others? Then what happened to second brother? In an instant, Xianxia thought of his second brother, Jianghu. He was about to straighten his body and go down to ask about it. But his mind changed. The Misty School's destruction wasn't something that happened today. What's the use of being anxious now? It's better to wait and see. Sure enough, the disciple of the Misty School sorrowfully said, "If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. You've been drooling over my Misty School for a long time. You're just looking for an excuse to annex it. What martial arts secret manual? It's all a lie you made up." Hee hee, whether or not there are martial arts secret manuals is not something small people like us can know. In any case, your Misty School's destruction is an indisputable fact. Sigh, as expected of a school with an inheritance. Even when surrounded by us, you still managed to escape from Misty Mountain Villa. Brother, how have you been these 3 years of hiding your name and changing your surname? Why don't you obediently come with us to the Righteous Alliance? From then on, you can walk openly in Jianghu. We brothers will use our lives to guarantee that you'll definitely have a considerable position in the Righteous Alliance. Hearing this, Xianxia was even more shocked. The Misty School has already been destroyed for 3 years. Isn't that the same time I was on the deserted island? I don't know if second brother also escaped like this person. And, in a moment, I'll save him and ask him. Thinking this, he gently took out the small sword from his bosom and used his divine sense to control it in the air, waiting for an opportunity. That Misty School disciple smiled and said, "I don't know what position you 3 brothers have in the Righteous Alliance." This. One of them hesitated and said, "We're all disciples of the Golden Hall under the Righteous Alliance's 6th Alliance Master. If you're willing to come with us, we'll definitely report it to the Hallmaster and record it as a great merit." That Misty School disciple thought for a moment and said, "It's not that I don't believe you 3 brothers, but your positions seem to be low. How can you guarantee that your little brother's life won't be in danger?" "You." One of them was somewhat angry, while the other smiled and said, "Little brother, you don't know. Our several sects have a secret agreement. As long as you're a disciple of the sect, as long as you're a survivor of the Misty School. Oh, of course, if little brother has the intention to abandon the dark and join the light, then naturally I'm not talking about you. As long as you're willing to join any sect, then you can keep your life. If you can provide the whereabouts of others, then according to how many survivors you capture, you'll be rewarded. That's why my brother is so generous as to agree with you." "Oh, so that's how it is. See, you guys really put in a lot of effort. Little brother, since we've already spoken to this point, you can see that it's already late. Why don't you put down your sword and let us seal your acupoints and return to the hall with us? That way you'll be able to make a great merit for our sect." "AI, fine. Since I've already fallen to this point, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. I have no choice but to make a decision." Finished speaking, that person turned the sword hilt and handed it over. That person in front of him smiled and said, "Little brother is really smart. If you've already done this, then why did you let us chase you for so many days?" Finished speaking, he stretched out his hand to take the sword hilt. Seeing this scene, Xianxia was a bit surprised. This Misty School disciple was able to escape for so many days. He must be a person with a strong will. How could he give up so easily? Sure enough, before Xianxia finished thinking, she saw a change in the situation. That disciple's hand that was holding the sword tip suddenly gripped it. His entire hand was covered in blood. That disciple did not seem to know pain as he held the sword and chopped down at that person's arm. At such a close distance, that person could not react. His face changed greatly. Seeing that his arm was about to be cut off, at that moment, A sword suddenly appeared from the side and blocked that person's arm. A dang sound was heard as that misty school disciple's sword was blocked. That disciple felt pain in his hand and lost his grip on the sword, causing the sword hilt to turn around. The misty school disciple stretched out his left hand to grab the sword hilt as if he did not care about the blood flowing from his right hand. The Righteous Alliance disciple who used his sword to block the attack laughed and said, "Good brat, I knew there was something fishy going on. After being chased by us for so many days, how could he just surrender like that?" That disciple who almost had his arm cut off gritted his teeth and fiercely said, "Senior brother, don't talk nonsense. As long as we keep him alive, what can't we get out of him? Even if we can't get anything out of him, that's because of the other people's ability. As long as we take him down, it will be a great merit." The other two also laughed and said, "Junior brother is right." That misty school disciple saw that there was no turning back and did not reply. Holding the sword in his left hand, he thrust it forward. The three people from the Righteous Alliance were already prepared. How could they let him have the chance? Both the sword and saber arrived. In just a few moves, that disciple's body had a few more wounds. If it was not for the fact that they wanted to capture him alive, he would have already died. Seeing this, that misty school disciple swung the sword in his left hand and used a night battle in 8 directions to force the three people back. Then, looking at the night sky, he bitterly smiled and said, "Leader O, this little one is a disciple of the Misty School in this life. I hope to be your subordinate in the next life." Saying this, he pulled the sword in his left hand back and was about to cut his own throat. Seeing this, the three people surrounding him were shocked. They hurriedly went up to stop him. But how could it be too late? At this moment of crisis, they saw an object coming from afar. A black light flashed and hit the sword in the Misty School disciple's hand. But with a gotcha sound, that sword was actually broken into 2. Then that object did not slow down and stabbed into the ground. In the darkness, it seemed like a dagger. The three people from the Righteous Alliance were shocked and turned around to look. They saw that not far away on a hillside, a thin figure stood up from the ground. Then he actually used Qinggong to fly on grass. Like a gust of wind, he floated down and in an instant, he was in front of everyone. At this time, everyone saw clearly that this was a slightly tall youth around 15 or 16 years old. That person entered the field and did not pay attention to the three people from the Righteous Alliance. Instead, he stared at the Misty School disciple and asked, "What did you say? What happened to the Misty School?" The ethereal sect disciple's sword was first broken by the flying dagger and the web between his thumb and index finger on his left hand was cracked. Then, he was shocked by the young man's superb lightness skill. Most importantly, the young man was so young. Seeing him staring at him and asking questions, he did not know what to say. At this time, the three people surrounding the Misty School disciple moved slightly and expanded their encirclement. They quietly surrounded the youth. Then, one of them clasped his fist and asked, "May I know which sect this Xianxia is from? I am a disciple of the Righteous Alliance's Jianghu Hall. I am here to handle some matters." Xianxia. Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular series of works are all at Qidian Originals. Chapter 329. Shut up. Without waiting for that person to finish speaking, the young man shouted. That person was startled, but before he could finish his sentence, the three of them looked at each other and clenched their weapons tightly, secretly on guard. Xianxia saw that he had frightened the Misty School's disciple, so he cupped his hands and bowed. "Senior brother, I used to work at Huanxi Mountain Villa, and my name is Xianxia. Yes, I used to work with He Tianshu from the pharmacy hall, planting medicinal herbs. When I heard senior brother's words, I was very puzzled, so I came out. Senior brother, please explain in detail." He Tianshu from the pharmacy hall? The disciple frowned. There were thousands of people in the Misty School. How could he know each and every one of them? But soon after he pondered for a moment and said mockingly, "Yes, I don't know people like He Tianshu. There are so many people in the Misty School, you can just make up a name, and there might not be no one in the sect. Righteous methods are useless against me." After saying that, his eyes looked at the small sword stuck in the ground. Xianxia was stunned, but immediately understood. He smiled without saying anything, and slowly walked forward. The disciple was surprised and stepped back. "What are you doing?" Zhang Xiaohua ignored him and walked straight to the small sword, bending down to pull it out. In fact, if he directly moved the sword, how could it be so laborious? He just didn't want more people to know that he cultivated the way of immortality, which would attract unnecessary trouble. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua pick up the small sword, the three people from the Righteous Alliance couldn't hold back. They had just used psychological tactics against the Misty School's disciple, but not only did they not win easily, there was also a tiger blocking their way. If they hesitated, there might be unexpected changes. In the current situation, 2 against 3, they still had the confidence to win, but after a while, that might not be the case. Although just now they were shocked by Zhang Xiaohua's qinggong, but when they heard that this young man was only a herb grower in the Huanxi manor, and was only the subordinate of a Misty School's pharmacy hall's disciple, they couldn't help but look down on him. Thinking of this, a disciple from the Righteous Alliance sneered. "Haha, another survivor of the Misty School, but your weight seems to be a lot lighter, just a servant. Huanxi Manor seems to be a branch of the Misty School, so your weight is also a bit lighter. But this merit is delivered to our door, how can we brothers reject it?" After saying that, the other 2 people guarded the space behind Zhang Xiaohua and the Misty School disciple, preventing them from escaping. The other person held a long sword and stabbed towards Zhang Xiaohua's face. Zhang Xiaohua's long sword was placed on the back of the David's deer and did not bring it along. Seeing the opponent's long sword stabbing towards her, her body swayed, using the ethereal steps to dodge the sword. At the same time, she passed the small sword to her left hand and pushed forward with her right hand, using the fist of the Big Dipper. When the Righteous Alliance disciple saw that Zhang Xiaohua was so careless, actually not using a weapon and directly facing the enemy with bare hands, he was furious in his heart and directly slashed towards Zhang Xiaohua's right arm. Zhang Xiaohua did not panic, still using the ethereal steps to fight with him. After a few rounds, the long sword actually stained the corner of Zhang Xiaohua's clothes. Not to mention the Righteous Alliance disciple who was facing the enemy, the other 3 people were half happy and half worried. The 2 Righteous Alliance disciples were worried that the martial arts of this young man who appeared out of nowhere was actually so high. How was he a servant? He was even more powerful than the Misty School disciple just now. They were afraid that this mission would be ruined. And the Misty School disciple was happy that this young man who called himself Zhang Xiaohua was using the Misty School's ethereal steps. He had deliberately used it. Wasn't it to tell him his identity? Seeing that he could keep his life, how could he not be happy? But thinking about it carefully, this youth claimed to be a servant of Huanxi Manor. How could he have learned the ethereal steps? This was the sect's divine skill. Even he had only seen it recently. Looking at this youth's skill, he had been in Misty School for more than 10 years. How could he not have heard of it? Could this be a trap set by the Righteous Alliance? Not to mention that after the Misty School's disciple thought about it, the situation on the field did not change. Zhang Xiaohua only used the Big Dipper fist and ethereal steps to tangle with the Righteous Alliance's disciple. In the past, when Zhang Xiaohua was not proficient in martial arts, she used these 2 martial arts to defeat the young experts of the Dalan Temple in the martial arts exhibition. In these few years, how could Zhang Xiaohua's martial arts progress be imagined by an ordinary person? Not to mention the ethereal steps and Big Dipper divine fist. Even the ordinary Arhut fist and 6 directions fist would have a miraculous effect when used against the enemy under the effects of divine sense. This Righteous Tao Alliance disciple was far from being a match for them. Seeing that his attack had no effect, the Righteous Alliance's disciple was somewhat anxious. With a loud shout, his long sword pierced towards Zhang Xiaohua's chest. Zhang Xiaohua dodged to the side again and the disciple's left arm also lifted up at the same time. With a so sound, an arrow was shot straight towards Zhang Xiaohua's body that was still in the air. The Misty School's disciple who was watching by the side also exclaimed in a low voice. This kind of concealed weapon that was shot in the air was the hardest to guard against. Presumably, the number of martial arts experts that were injured by this move was not small. But the next thing that happened made the 4 people present dumbstruck. They saw that Zhang Xiaohua did not make any other movements. She only stretched her right hand forward like she was picking up a flower. Very gently, she pinched the arrow between her thumb and forefinger. The blue arrow head on the arrow could be seen clearly under the moonlight. Seeing that the arrow had failed, the Righteous Alliance's disciple shouted, "Flower pinching finger? You are from the Dalan Temple. My 2 junior brothers, quickly come and help me." The other two did not have the time to look at the Misty School's disciple. They each drew their swords and were about to step forward. At this time, a light laugh came from the field and said, "Since you came down to attack, then don't blame me for returning an eye for an eye." Ha! They saw that Xianxia was like a wisp of smoke. Her figure leapt up and pounced in front of the Righteous Alliance's disciple. That disciple hurriedly held his sword horizontally, wanting to block. But that sword seemed to pierce through the void and did not seem to have any strength. Xianxia's figure was like a ghost. She leapt up, the small sword in her left hand very naturally extended forward, then immediately retracted, her figure somersaulting backwards to meet one of the Righteous Alliance's disciple who was brandishing his blade. Similarly, her figure also leapt up, the small sword piercing out from a strange angle. The target was the disciple's throat. That disciple was unable to stop in time. He moved upwards, sending his throat to the tip of the small sword. That small sword touched his throat and immediately retracted. Her figure did not stop, immediately turning around and floating towards the last disciple. The last disciple was a smart one. Seeing that the situation was not good, he did not move forward at all. Instead, he leaned and leapt out of the field. By the time Xianxia turned around, she was already quite a distance away. Xianxia had already announced her name. Naturally, she did not have any mercy. She used the levitation technique. Her body seemed to float in the air, floating on the ground. In a few blinks of an eye, she had already caught up to that disciple. She lifted her leg and lightly kicked that disciple's back. That disciple had started early, so his qinggong was passable. He was rejoicing. Who would have thought that there was no sound of wind behind him, but his back seemed to have been hit by a 1,000-gene-heavy object. He saw stars, spat out a mouthful of blood and immediately lost consciousness. His body flew diagonally far away before collapsing to the ground. Xianxia kicked out, no longer paying attention to him. She kept the small sword, clapped her hands, and walked back with a smile. That Misty School's disciple seemed to have seen a monster. He looked at the ordinary thin-looking youth walking towards him in disbelief. He said, You. In the end, he did not finish his sentence. Xianxia looked at him, sat cross-legged on the ground, and said with a smile, "Senior, the annoying flies are gone. This world is quiet. You can tell me about the Misty School." Then, looking at his bloody right hand, he said, "Senior brother, you'd better clean up the wound on your hand or the wound on your body. I don't have any experience in this area, and I don't have any medicine or anything like that on me." At this time, that Misty School's disciple came to his senses and said, It's fine. It's just a small matter, brother. Wait a moment, I can handle it myself." After that, this disciple methodically took out something from his chest, applied medicine on the wound on his body, hand, and other places. He was very skilled. After waiting for him to finish, he came forward and saluted again, saying, "Brother, I was really rude just now, but in the past few years, my Misty School's disciples have been in danger, so I had to be careful. By the way, brother, what did you say you were called?" Xianxia laughed involuntarily and said, "I'm the servant of the Huanxi Manor's herbs. My name is Xianxia. I've been working with He Tianshu in the Huanxi Manor's pharmacy." "Oh, brother, you're called Xianxia. I'm Chu Yunfei of the Divine Machine Hall." "Divine Machine Hall?" Hee, I have some impression of it, but I've only been to the Misty Mountain Villa a few times, so I don't know many disciples. Alas, in the current Jianghu, if there is no conspiracy, no one will admit that they are from the Misty School. My Divine Machine Hall is basically just a name now. Oh, by the way, brother, are you really the servant of the Huanxi Manor's herbs? But how can your martial arts be so high? Moreover, you can even use the ethereal steps of our Misty School? This. Xianxia was a little hesitant. Seeing that Xianxia was a little hesitant, Chu Yunfei quickly said, "Brother Zhang, if you have any difficulties, you don't have to say it." Xianxia smiled and said, "There's nothing difficult about it. It's just that I had an agreement with sect leader O earlier, so I couldn't tell you about it. However, I'm indeed from Huanxi Manor, and I've seen Qiu Tong and Manor Lord O Yen." "Is that so? Then I won't ask further. By the way, I just heard that the disciples of the Righteous Alliance said that the Misty School was destroyed. Where is Master O now? How is the Huanxi Manor now? What's going on? I only heard a few words just now, and I'm confused. Senior brother, please clear my doubts." Chu Yunfei smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Zhang, have you not been in Jianghu for a long time?" Xianxia nodded and said, "Yes, I've been trapped in a place." After leaving the Huanxi Manor, I haven't been in Jianghu for 4 or 5 years. Alas, I see. Brother Zhang, the Misty School was destroyed 3 years ago. Master O. Chapter 330. Ah, really? But I don't know what happened. No matter what, the Misty School is still a big sect in Jianghu. How can it be destroyed just like that? Moreover, all the thousands of disciples in the Misty School died for the sect? Chu Yunfei bitterly smiled and said, "In this world, there is no sect that can stand forever. My Misty School has been declining for a long time. To be able to stand for 10,000 years in this unpredictable Jianghu is already a miracle. I heard that a long time ago, there was an extremely powerful Shindao sect. It seemed to be 100 times stronger than my Misty School, but wasn't it also destroyed before us? However, less than half of the elite disciples of the sect managed to escape. The rest of the disciples died on the spot." Bas. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly stood up and said in a trembling voice, "Only less than half of the elite disciples managed to escape? The rest died for the sect? Then did a disciple called Zhang Xiaohu manage to escape?" Zhang Xiaohu? Chu Yunfei was dazed for a moment and said, "Zhang Xiaohu, this name is very familiar. Let me think. Oh, I know. He used his connections to enter my Misty School. Later, he got lucky and was accepted by Martial Uncle Wen. Yes, it's that lucky guy. Did he also manage to escape?" At this time, Zhang Xiaohua didn't care what other people said about her second brother. She hurriedly asked. "No." Chu Yunfei decisively replied. "Ah!" Zhang Xiaohua exclaimed. She clenched her teeth and clenched her fists. Just as she was about to ask which sect attacked the Misty Mountain Villa, Chu Yunfei said another sentence. Zhang Xiaohua almost fainted. However, Zhang Xiaohu doesn't seem to have died. Ah! Zhang Xiaohua nearly fell to the ground with a thud. He thought to himself, "Senior brother, can you not speak like that? Can't you finish your sentence in one sentence?" Zhang Xiaohua stepped forward and asked, "Then where is Zhang Xiaohu now?" "Well, I'm not sure if Zhang Xiaohu is dead or not." This time, Zhang Xiaohua fell in front of Chu Yunfei. Even the Righteous Alliance's 3 experts hadn't been able to force back Zhang Xiaohua. But Chu Yunfei had done it. Zhang Xiaohua forced herself to get up and thought to herself, "My senior brother from Misty School, can we be more specific? Although this little sweetheart of yours has been tempered with immortal cultivation techniques, it still can't withstand your torment." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua lose her composure, Chu Yunfei felt embarrassed and said, "Little brother, are you too tired? Those 3 Righteous Alliance's disciples are not ordinary experts. They have been chasing me for several days. If you are tired, you should take a rest first." Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Senior brother Chu, it's better if you don't. If you have the time, please tell me about the Misty sect. I will be very grateful." So it's like this. Actually, what happened at Misty School that day is known by everyone in Jianghu. You can find anyone to inquire about it. Sigh, sad things should be told to sad people. Brother, listen to senior brother tell you about the sad things. Thus, the 2 of them sat on the ground. With Chu Yunfei's tireless narration, Zhang Xiaohua learned about the events of that year. It was an autumn 3 years ago. It was the day when all things were competing with each other. But in this day of harvest and looking forward to the future, Misty School's sect leader O Peng was sitting on a chair with a headache. He had the urge to use his thumb to fiercely rub his temples. Ever since he subdued Shui Yupeng a year ago and gave her the position of vice sect leader of Misty School, he firmly controlled the Luo Shui gang under the Misty School. The strength of the entire Misty School greatly increased. The results greatly stimulated the ambitions of the 6 Misty Tigers. They all wanted to make contributions that no one had ever made in their lifetime. However, just as O Peng finished organizing the resources of the Luo Shui gang, coordinated the water and land forces of the Misty School, and prepared to revive the Immortal Dao and once again set his sights on Jianghu, he felt that it was difficult to move forward. Moreover, he had suffered an inexplicable setback. Let's first talk about the revival of the Immortal Dao. Since he already knew that the heaven and earth Yuan Qi in this world was recovering, and at this time, he also discovered Zhang Xiaohua's Big Dipper Fist, which seemed to be an inheritance of the Immortal Dao, and at this time, O Peng almost thought that he was the godfather of the Immortal Dao. He excitedly used an extremely cheap price to exchange for the manual of the Big Dipper Fist. At that time, he sent his eldest disciple, Xianxia, to impart the Big Dipper Fist to the only son of the deputy chief, Shui Tiantian. Although Shui Tiantian was only 4 years old, but he was considered to be a genius. In a short period of time, he was proficient in the Big Dipper Fist, and practiced the Big Dipper Fist no less than 5 times a day. Of course, since Shui Tiantian was a genius, and when Peng persuaded Shui Yupeng to join the Misty School, he also promised to teach him all the divine skills of the Misty School. At this time, he naturally couldn't hide anything from Shui Tiantian. Everything that could be taught was picked out for Shui Tiantian. Shui Yupeng was beaming with joy as she watched, and worked even harder for the Misty School. Shui Tiantian was like a sponge absorbing water, seriously absorbing the essence of the inheritance of the Misty School. Regarding the Big Dipper Fist, Shui Tiantian was quite knowledgeable. Although Shui Tiantian was only 4 years old, but he was also considered to be a genius. In a short period of time, he was proficient in the Big Dipper Fist, and practiced the Big Dipper Fist no less than 5 times a day. Of course, since Shui Tiantian was a genius, and when Peng persuaded Shui Yupeng to join the Misty School, he also promised to teach him all the divine skills of the Misty School. At this time, he naturally couldn't hide anything from Shui Tiantian. Everything that could be taught was picked out for Shui Tiantian. Shui Yupeng was all smiles as she watched, and worked even harder for the Misty School. Shui Tiantian was like a sponge absorbing water, seriously absorbing the essence of the inheritance of the Misty School. Ethereal steps, etc. Therefore, other than practicing 3 times a day in the morning, noon, and night, Shui Tiantian spent the rest of his time comprehending the ethereal steps and ethereal divine art. Although Shui Tiantian's progress in the latter two had exceeded Zhang Qingyue's and Peng's expectations, the two's attention was not on this. Instead, it was on the seemingly ordinary and error-filled Big Dipper magical fist technique. Shui Tiantian had been practicing the Big Dipper magical fist technique for more than half a year, but there was nothing abnormal about it. Other than his arm strength being slightly stronger than an ordinary child's, there was nothing else that could be seen. And you want to say that Shui Tiantian did not try his best to practice the Big Dipper magical fist technique? That was not right. The Big Dipper magical fist technique was the fist technique that he had learned. After mastering it, he did not give up and practiced it 3 or even 5 times a day. If it was any other fist technique, not to mention 3 times, even 1 or several times a day would not be a small number. After all, the people of the martial arts world still emphasized on internal strength. Could it be that this arm strength was the effect of the Big Dipper magical fist technique? Thinking about how Zhang Xiaohua's arms were different from an ordinary person's, Peng sometimes could not help but come to this conclusion. Later, when the Misty School recruited young disciples again in the 2nd year, Peng specially requested Zhang Qingyue to select a group of disciples with good talent and teach them the Big Dipper magical fist technique as a compulsory fist technique. However, the results were still not very obvious. It was similar to Shui Tiantian's situation. His arm strength had increased a lot, but there were no other abnormalities. In his disappointment, Peng thought of the missing Zhang Xiaohua. If Peng had not seen the exquisite moves of the Big Dipper magical fist technique, which were different from the current fist techniques, and the entire fist technique's attack and defense, Peng would not have felt sorry for the 1,000 taels of silver he had spent. This Zhang Xiaohua actually went missing as soon as she left the Misty School. She did not even do a good job in the after-sales service. Speaking of Zhang Xiaohua's disappearance, Peng was also helpless. In fact, when Zhang Xiaohua asked for leave from the Misty School, he was not very willing. However, Zhang Xiaohua was not a disciple of the Misty School, and was also the subordinate of his own biological sister. It was not good for him to interfere. As for Zhang Xiaohu, it was just unintentional. Whether he went back or left the Misty School had nothing to do with Peng, so he naturally agreed very quickly. What Peng did not expect was that Zhang Xiaohu went back to the Misty School, but Zhang Xiaohua did not come back. What came back was the news of Zhang Xiaohua's disappearance. Peng was furious and almost wanted to slap Zhang Xiaohu to death. However, looking at Zhang Xiaohu's absent-minded and guilty face, he endured it again and again. However, he did not dare to be too loud and quickly sent a few capable disciples to inquire about the news. In fact, before Zhang Xiaohu returned to the mountain, he risked his life to inquire about Zhang Xiaohua in Shitsue Mountain. After he settled Li Jinfeng's family and waited for a day in Lu town, he still did not see any trace of Zhang Xiaohua. He felt something was wrong and did not dare to return to the Guozhuang house. Instead, he went straight to Shizue Mountain. Knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain, he still went to the mountain. His own biological brother was there, so why would he care about his own safety? At that time, he only blamed himself for not staying, but left his younger brother behind. He also blamed himself for not being able to stay for his younger brother because of his poor martial arts. But since things had turned out this way, what was the use of more self-blame? It was not until Zhang Xiaohu went to Shizue Mountain without hesitation that he found that the whole mountain was in chaos. Some people were fighting with their fists, some were fighting with their swords, and most of them were running down the mountain with small cloth bags on their backs. Zhang Xiaohua crouched on the side of the road, looking at this and that. None of them were good people, and he was surrounded by people, so he did not dare to show up casually. It was not until the sky was getting dark that he stopped an older bandit. After asking him, he knew that Shizue Mountain was not the same as it was a few days ago. Shizue Mountain no longer existed, just like a few years ago. It turned out that that night, Zhang Xiaohua was captured by Qin Shiyue. Qin Shiyue asked Ding Fei to carry him, and he returned to the mountain village to search carefully, but he still found nothing. In his rage, he killed many soldiers on duty and all the elites of Shizue Mountain, causing great panic. After Qin Shiyue left, these mountain bandits swarmed to find their fort master. Unfortunately, their fort master was also killed in his own room. Then, the mountain bandits were in a mess, thinking that their mountain village had provoked a martial arts master and someone was coming to seek revenge. The whole mountain village was like a group of dragons without a leader. Well, the whole front half of the dragon was gone, leaving only those with poor martial arts and undisciplined people. They did not have the awareness that the mountain village is their home. Some people even saw the open secret room and found some scattered jewelry in the corner. So the internal strife of people dying for wealth and birds dying for food was really staged. Chapter 331. After fighting and killing, the result was really seen. The property of Li Jinfeng's family was found, and the private goods hidden by other people were also found. It was like pouring cold water into a hot pot of oil, and the pot exploded in an instant. The scene became more difficult to control. More people were killed and injured, and the property was also robbed in a mess. It was not until Zhang Xiaohu came to Shizue Mountain again that the dog-eat-dog farce came to an end. The surviving people took their own gains, got off the pirate ship, abandoned the darkness for the light, and found a way out. Zhang Xiaohu was confused by the words of the bandit. When did his brother become so powerful? Was there such a divine power? But no matter how carefully he asked, he couldn't get anything. After all, those who could survive now were extremely cunning old bandits. Moreover, the bandit himself didn't see Qin Shiyue kill people. As he said, the martial arts master killed people like slaughtering chickens. The people on the wall of the stockade were killed before they had time to react. The rest of the people woke up and shouted loudly. When they fled, many more were killed. When the others woke up, it was already dawn. The martial arts master had already gone far away. Who could see the true face of Mount Lu? With a mind full of doubts, Zhang Xiaohu let the bandit go first. He couldn't block the bandit's way of turning over a new leaf, could he? But Zhang Xiaohu heard the lethality of the martial arts master. He was definitely not his brother, Zhang Xiaohua. But since this person was not his younger brother, then where did his younger brother go? Was he killed by the martial arts master who came to seek revenge as a bandit? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua could no longer ambush on the side of the road. He jumped up and went up Shizue Mountain along the mountain road. When Zhang Xiaohu stepped into the gate of Shizue Mountain, there was a mess in front of him. Fortunately, the bandits in the stockade were used to disbanding. They robbed in an orderly manner and didn't set fire to the stockade. It seemed that they planned to go up the mountain again. There were only worthless corpses scattered all over the ground. Many bandits in the stockade had already run away. The rest were the old, weak, sick, and disabled, puppies and kittens. No one cared that a stranger would come to the stockade. Moreover, this person only looked at each corpse carefully. They thought that this guy just came to take the wealth of the dead. They all sneered in their hearts, Why did this guy only think of it now? The corpses underground have been swept away by us countless times. How can there be any surplus wealth? Then they were busy with their own things and went crazy for the last time. There were hundreds of corpses on the ground. Jianghu looked through them one by one, regardless of their body shape or dress, for fear of missing something. Every time he turned over a corpse, he was afraid to see a familiar face. But after examining all the corpses, Xianxia was overjoyed. Since there were no corpses, there must be hope of survival. So he worked hard again to look through all the places in the stockade, but still found nothing. At this time, he was completely relieved. Thinking of his brother's lightness skill, he must have run away. Right at that time, Zhang Xiaohu suddenly had a thought. Did Xiaohua go back to the Guozhuang house first? The steady Zhang Xiaohu did not immediately return home. Instead, he looked through all the corpses again until the sky brightened. After working all night, he was full of energy and rode back to the Guozhuang house. He was really looking forward to when he returned to the Guozhuang house. His younger brother would be holding a bowl of rice and squatting under a tree, laughing at him for coming back so late. How could he be so stupid that he didn't know to go back to the Guozhuang house first? But when he rushed back to the Guozhuang house and saw his mother and sister-in-law waiting for him at the village entrance, he knew that something was wrong. His heart turned cold. Xiaohua really did not come back. Zhang Xiaohu's mind turned countless times, but he did not have any good excuses. If he said that Zhang Xiaohua went back or did something else, how could he explain the empty date red horse beside him? But if he told his mother about Zhang Xiaohua's disappearance, how could he open his mouth? Gua Sufei, who was at the village entrance, was also bitterly waiting for her two sons to return. First, she comforted herself that Li Jinfeng's family was warm and wanted them to stay for one more day. But 2 days had passed. Which family would have such a reason to keep their guests? As a result, Gua Sufei could no longer sit still. She had been waiting at the entrance of the village the night before yesterday, hoping that her son would return. Last night, she also did not sleep well. At dawn, she had been waiting at the entrance of the village. When it was close to noon, she saw a familiar date red horse appear. Her heart was filled with joy, but she immediately saw an empty horse. That horse was missing her heart. When Zhang Xiaohu arrived at the village entrance and dismounted from the horse, Guosufei tightly grabbed Zhang Xiaohu's arm, gritted her teeth, and interrogated Zhang Xiaohua's whereabouts. Zhang Xiaohu's face was ashen. How could he dare to tell the truth at the village entrance? He only pulled his sister-in-law and dragged his mother back to the small courtyard. When the whole family was gathered, he told the whole story. When she heard that her own son, who was trying to save someone, had ended up missing, Guosufei could not help but feel sad. She knew that her son's actions were the actions of a man and were righteous. But after all, the person he saved was a stranger she had never seen before, and the one who went missing was her son, who she was worried about. How could she not cry? Zhang Kai and Mr. Liu had different feelings. After all, they were both born as strict fathers. They felt that for a child to do such a righteous and awe-inspiring thing, it was exactly what a man should do. They were quite proud. Even if they were on the side, they would still encourage and gladly go forward. Moreover, they still had not received the most serious grievous news. And Zhang Xiaohua had acted for righteousness, so she must be loved by heaven and earth. How could she die so easily? Alas, how could they know that heaven and earth were heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs? In this world, how much righteousness could be preached and how much good intentions could be rewarded? If Zhang Xiaohua had not been coincidentally lucky, she would have been captured and taken to the Dragon God sect long ago. Who knew what her ending would be? Everyone tried to persuade Guosufei, but they could not ease the knot in her heart. In the end, it was Mr. Liu, who was not involved in the matter, who probed, "Could we ask the Misty School to help Zhang Xiaohua?" This sentence was like an epiphany, waking Zhang Xiaohu up. Yes, his abilities were limited, but he had a powerful sect behind him. With such a great resource, how could he not make full use of it? After thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohu did not have the mood to stay at home. He packed his luggage and immediately set off from the Guozhuang house. He rushed back to the Misty School in Pingyang City overnight. He also made an appointment with his family. Once there was any news, he would ask someone to inform them immediately. After Zhang Xiaohu rushed back to the Misty School, he did not know how to ask for help. He could not possibly ask sect leader O directly and say that his younger brother was missing and see if he could help look for him. Jianghu could imagine that he would definitely be chased out by O Peng. Therefore, he could only ask his master, Wen Hai, for help. Wen Hai was also rather helpless. Although he was O Peng's personal disciple, he did not hold any real power in the sect. He did not have the right to mobilize the disciples of the Divine Mechanics Division. Therefore, Wen Hai also took the time to find an opportunity to tactfully convey this request to eldest senior brother Zhang Chengyue, hoping that Zhang Chengyue would extend a helping hand on the account that they were fellow disciples of the same sect. Zhang Chengyue naturally knew the importance of Zhang Xiaohua. When he heard this, he did not even say a second word to Wen Hai. He immediately rushed out of the door and hurriedly informed O Peng of this news, leaving Wen Hai stunned at the side. He thought that eldest senior brother was angry over this small matter. Just as Wen Hai apologetically told Zhang Xiaohu that he might not be able to help and that he could look for O Yen, Zhang Xiaohu hurriedly rushed over to look for Zhang Xiaohu. When Zhang Xiaohu arrived at the meeting hall and repeated the matter of Zhang Xiaohua's disappearance, Zhang Xiaohu's reaction was far beyond his expectations. Sect leader O immediately sent 10 disciples of the Divine Mechanics Division to Shitsue Mountain to find Zhang Xiaohua's whereabouts. They wanted to see her alive or dead. Zhang Xiaohu was touched. He did not expect sect leader O to be so benevolent. A professional was a professional. Not long after, the disciples of the Divine Mechanics Division brought back the news. Although they did not find Zhang Xiaohua's whereabouts, they found out that Shitsue Mountain was related to the Dragon God sect. On the day of the incident at Shitsue Mountain, there was a special envoy from the Tenryu sect present in the stronghold. When he heard this news, O Peng hesitated. At this time, the Righteous Alliance and the Tenryu sect were at loggerheads. However, there was no direct conflict. Many people related to the Righteous Alliance were killed by the Tenryu sect's disciples, and many of them were exterminated. However, the Righteous Alliance did not dare to fight the Tenryu sect head-on. They only made solemn statements and seriously protested. Occasionally, they skirted around the edges and scratched at the weak spots of the Tenryu sect. Even the super sects of Jianghu were so docile, so how could O Peng not avoid them? He sternly ordered the disciples of the Divine Mechanics Division to quickly return to the stronghold. At the same time, he ordered Zhang Chengyue to temporarily postpone the plan for the path of immortality. He was afraid that the Tenryu sect had other intentions for kidnapping Zhang Xiaohua, or that they had learned the importance of the Fist of the North Star from Zhang Xiaohua. As for Zhang Xiaohu, O Peng only said that the disciples of the Divine Mechanics Division had not found any news about Zhang Xiaohua and were half-heartedly brushing him off. As for Zhang Xiaohu, he did not have any news about his younger brother. Naturally, he was unable to pass any information to the Guozhuang house. He could only hope that the two elders at home would be able to recover from their grief with time. Time flew by. Soon, it had been almost a year since Zhang Xiaohua went missing. Who knew how many sorrows, joys, and separations had happened in the Jianghu? Other than Zhang Xiaohu, who would still remember Zhang Xiaohua, who had been in the limelight at the Misty School's martial arts competition? Perhaps only O Peng was unable to restrain the passion in his heart. When he saw that the Tenryu sect did not seem to care about the Misty School and placed his hopes on the Fist of the North Star once again, he was extremely disappointed. Only then would he remember Zhang Xiaohua, the originator of the Fist of the North Star. At this moment, O Peng was not only vexed about the setback of the Path of Immortality's revival plan, but also about something else. Chapter 332. In the past month, all of the ethereal sect's branches, strongholds, and even escort agencies had been wiped out by an unknown force. Many of their elite disciples had gone missing, forcing sect leader O to slowly withdraw his forces to the vicinity of Pingyang City. However, the Divine Secrets Hall's disciples that he had sent out to gather information either never returned or did not receive any news at all. Left with no choice, O Peng sent out the fourth of the 6 ethereal tigers, Shangguan Fenglu, and the 6th, Su Pei Hua, to lead a group of elite disciples to personally investigate the matter. With such a crisis hanging over his head like a sharp sword, how could O Peng not be vexed? Who was the mastermind behind this series of events? This was a question that had always troubled O Peng. O Peng felt like he was scratching an itch. He knew that it was extremely itchy, but he just couldn't reach out to scratch it. He couldn't even scratch his ears and cheeks. Suddenly, a thought appeared in Peng's mind. Could it be the Dragon God sect? Could it be that after Zhang Xiaohua was captured by the Tenryu sect, he was tortured to extort a confession? Why torture him? He's just a village boy. The Tenryu sect has plenty of ways to make him talk. So, Zhang Xiaohua revealed everything about his Fist of the North Star? The Tenryu sect is a great sect with a heritage similar to the Misty School. If I can see through it myself, Di Shirtian of the Tenryu sect must also be aware of it. Could it be that the Tenryu sect is trying to cover up the revival of the Immortal Tao? Or is it because they want to leave before my Misty School that they suddenly attacked my Misty School? Sigh, I shouldn't have been soft-hearted back then. Peng's eyes flashed with a hint of sternness. But after a while, there was a burst of confusion in his eyes. This is also not right. Even if Sakura knows the secret of the Big Dipper magical fist, whether or not this Big Dipper magical fist is actually the big heavenly cycle of stars fist is still two different things. He didn't settle the matter first and cultivate his own immortal Tao disciple. Besides, the Tenryu sect's strength is comparable to the combined strength of the three super sections. They have always been restrained by the three super sections. If they were to harm my Misty School, the other three sects would definitely react. Why is there no news at all? Could it be? Peng's heart, which had been tempered to be strong, suddenly jumped. He instantly thought of another possibility, unless... Right at this moment, someone rushed into the assembly hall in a hurry. Peng was startled. He looked up and saw that it was his eldest disciple, Zhang Chengyue. Peng frowned slightly. Zhang Chengyue's face was pale and he was very flustered. Zhang Chengyue had always been experienced and steady in handling matters. He had never been so rude. Therefore, he didn't have the intention to scold Zhang Chengyue and asked, "Chengyue, why are you so flustered?" "Big sect master. There's a big disaster." Hearing Peng's dissatisfied tone, Zhang Chengyue already knew that he was being rude. However, it wasn't the time to pay attention to it. Big disaster? Peng's heart jumped and he blurted out, "Did the Tenryu sect besiege my Misty Mountain Manor?" "No, big sect master. No enemies appeared around our Misty School." "It's just that." Zhang Chengyue's tone was somewhat hesitant. Then he looked at Peng's gaze and said with gritted teeth, "Big sect master, fourth martial uncle and sixth martial uncle." Peng couldn't help but ask, "What happened to them?" Zhang Chengyue said with some sorrow, "Two martial uncles were killed and their corpses were brought back by the disciples of the sect." "What?" Peng exclaimed and immediately stood up from his chair. Fourth martial uncle, Shangguan Feng Lu, was quick-witted and resourceful. Sixth martial uncle, Su Pei Hua, was the best in Jianghu. When the two of them were roaming Jianghu, they were always together and had been through a lot. Now, the two of them had taken elixirs to increase their power. There were few opponents in Jianghu who could match them. But now, they were both killed at the same time. This was something he never expected. "Quick! Where are the corpses of the two martial brothers?" Reporting to Big Sect Master, "It's in the square in front of the conference hall." This disciple doesn't dare to act rashly. Hearing this, Peng stomped his right foot and his body floated up. He flew like a gust of wind to the entrance of the conference hall. His figure was 70% similar to Zhang Xiaohua's. From the chair to the door, Peng's feet basically didn't have any place to touch the ground. It was also very similar to Zhang Xiaohua's levitation technique. The square in front of the conference hall was still empty. There was only a broken carriage parked there alone. Beside it, there were a few dejected and injured disciples. Peng jumped down from the high platform. When the disciples saw him, they immediately saluted. Peng didn't even look at them. He walked to the front of the carriage and lifted the mat on the carriage with a trembling hand. Seeing the familiar lifeless face under the mat, Peng's heart couldn't help but ache and almost shed tears. This was the person he had grown up with, practiced martial arts with, and roamed the Jianghu with. They weren't blood brothers, but they were better than blood brothers. Now, this person was quietly lying in this shabby carriage, closing the eyes that had cared for him for dozens of years. Peng raised his head and shouted sternly, "What are you doing? Why didn't you buy the best coffins and use the best carriages to bring the two elders back?" The disciples were submissive. Only one of them mustered up the courage and said, "Sect leader, it's not that I didn't want to buy the coffins for the two elders. It's just that after the attack, the masked man in black had already prepared the carriage and mat. He told me not to move them. He also said that if I moved them and sect leader didn't notice anything wrong, I would be responsible for everything. I was afraid that I would delay the sect's important matters, so I rushed back and didn't dare to move them. Hearing his disciple's words, Peng clenched his teeth and regained his senses. He waved his hand and said, "All right, Cheng Yu, send someone to call eldest martial uncle, second martial uncle, and fifth martial uncle here. Also, carefully carry the bodies of the 2 martial uncles to the Divine Engineering Hall. Have Hall Master Shi and the Hall Elders examine them first. I want to see who was so bold as to touch the people of our Misty School. This debt of blood must be paid with blood. Also, the few of you, tell me in detail what happened when you were attacked." After he finished speaking, Peng didn't call the disciples to the Hall of Assembly. Instead, he asked them in detail in the square. When Zhang Chengyue heard this, he did not dare to tarry. He hurriedly called someone over and carefully instructed them to inform the 3 elders. He personally drove the carriage and brought the corpses of his 2 martial uncles to the Divine Mechanics Hall. The attack on Shangguan Fenglu and the others was very old-fashioned. The enemy didn't set up many traps. They just waited in one of the Misty School's branches. This branch was located in the corner of an extremely small town. There weren't many people there. When Shangguan Fenglu and the others arrived, it was already dusk. The group of more than 10 people was ambushed as soon as they arrived at the branch's courtyard. The elite disciples of the Misty School were very conceited. After all, they had been through the test of blood and fire. They also had 2 elders by their side. Naturally, they didn't plan to escape. They only wanted to avenge their brothers. It was a pity that the opponents who had set up the ambush seemed to have already predicted it. Or rather, the opponents were extremely powerful. Although their numbers were not much higher than the Ethereal Sect, the moment the Ethereal Sect's disciples exchanged blows with them, they realized that the men in black who had set up the ambush were all experts in the martial arts world. They actually managed to trap all the Ethereal Sect's disciples in the courtyard, and none of them were able to escape. Shangguan Fenglu and Su Peihua, who were holding the line, weren't in a better situation. They were facing 3 masters who were also masked in black. The 3 of them worked together to suppress the 2 of them. However, the 2 elders of the Misty School had taken the authentic strength-enhancing panacea, so they had more internal energy than their opponents. Even with Shangguan Fenglu's lightness skill, it was very likely that he could escape. However, if he ran away, Su Peihua, who was left behind, would die. Therefore, Shangguan Fenglu could only fight side by side with Su Peihua, hoping that they could fight their way out. Although the battle was divided into 2 groups, it was equally fierce and bloody. By the time night fell, the disciples of the Misty School had been completely annihilated. Only a few who were waiting to be used were left with their acupoints sealed. Shangguan Fenglu and Su Peihua were also seriously injured. They were barely holding on. At this moment, a yellow-faced old man who hadn't been seen before floated over. Seeing the situation, he was very surprised. "What's wrong? These 2 people are so difficult to deal with. Why haven't they succeeded yet?" Shangguan Fenglu and Su Peihua were shocked when they saw this person. Just as they were about to call out his name, the yellow-faced old man came in and hit their chests with his palm. In an instant, the 2 of them spat out blood and fell to the ground, dead before they could even say a word. The yellow-faced old man looked around and said proudly, "Act according to the original plan. Get someone to bring these 2 bodies back to the Misty School." Then he floated away. When the injured disciple finished telling the whole story of the attack, Peng's frown deepened. These disciples' kung fu was weak. They were the ones who were supposed to contact and guide the disciples. When they were attacked, they could only take care of themselves. How could they have the time to observe and collect other information? Moreover, when their acupoints were sealed, they only heard a few words and knew that a master of the masters had arrived and killed the 2 elders in one move. How could they know who this master was? At this moment, another disciple whispered, "Grand Gang Leader, this disciple secretly saw something." "Tell me quickly," Peng said anxiously. Among the 3 people who besieged the elders, one of them was wearing a felt hat. It was very strange, so I took a few more glances at him. Moreover, when they let us go, I took another glance at that person. At this time, his felt hat was gone. I reckon that the 2 elders had taken it away, but he was bald. The Dahlin Temple. Peng called out the name of this sect. If there was a sect that had the strength to wipe out so many elite disciples of the Misty School, and even 2 elders, then the Dalan Temple should be one of them. If there was a recent grudge with the Misty School, then the Dalan Temple should be at the top of the list. Chapter 333. At this time, from the corner of the square, 3 people quickly walked over. They were Misty Sects Hu Yuni, Li Jian, Li Lauer, Lu Qingyang, and Lu Laowu. The 3 of them came together and looked at Peng and the several injured disciples with astonishment. They asked, "Big sect leader, do you have any clues? Who's the one playing tricks behind us?" Peng waved at the disciples to let them go back and recover. He then turned to look at the 3 brothers who had grown up with him. He bit his lip and tears welled up in his eyes. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Hu Yuni was careful and asked immediately, "What's wrong, third? What happened?" Lu Qingyang smiled. "Third brother, what are you afraid of? The Misty School has been through more than 1 or 2 crises. Didn't we get through them all safely? All right, where are 4th and 6th? 6th still owes me 2 rounds of wine. That bastard's external skills are so bad that he's no match for me." His words seemed to have hit the softest spot in Peng's heart. Tears welled up in his eyes. Peng immediately turned his face away and swiped his finger in the air to cover it up. "They're at the Divine Mechanics Hall right now. Let's go take a look." That bastard 6th didn't look for me first. Damn it. Lu Qingyang was still careless and walked towards the Divine Mechanics Hall. Hu Yuni looked at Li Jian in surprise. He was about to ask Peng again when Peng also started walking and followed closely behind Lu Qingyang. A cold light flashed in Li Jian's eyes and he quickly followed. Perhaps he, who was the calmest, had realized something. Just as they reached the front of the Divine Mechanics Hall, they saw Zhang Chengyue rush out. He stopped when he saw the 4 of them and waited for Peng to approach before whispering, "Sect leader, Hall Master Shi and the others have seen it. Is it the Dalan Temple's technique?" Before Zhang Chengyue could reply, Lu Qingyang shouted, "What? The Dalan Temple's technique? Oh my! Is Lu Qingyang injured? I told him to practice the Golden Bell Shield earlier. Now look, the old bald donkeys from the Dalan Temple are so cunning. Lu Qingyang is going to have a hard time. By the way, old 6th is injured. Why didn't he go to the pharmacy?" In an instant, Hu Lao De and Li Lauer, who were following behind him, seemed to have understood something. They rushed forward, ignoring Peng and Lu Qingyang, and rushed into the Divine Machine Hall. Peng raised his hand in an attempt to stop her, but he only managed to raise his arm a little before it fell limply to the ground. Old 5th Lu didn't understand and followed him in. Just as Peng was about to take a step forward, Zhang Chengyue said, "Grand Sect Master, the 2 martial uncles didn't die at the hands of the Dalan Temple. The 2 fatal palm prints on their bodies were from the Righteous Alliance's Grand Universe Palm." "Ah! Zhang San's Grand Universe Palm? How is this possible?" Peng was even more surprised. At this moment, old 5th Lu's sorrowful shout came from the Divine Mechanics Hall. "Old 4th! Old 6!" What followed was a burst of wailing. Peng looked at the door of the Divine Mechanics Hall. His feet moved slightly, but he quickly retracted them. Standing there silently, Peng stroked the short beard on his chin and frowned deeply. After a while, he instructed Zhang Chengyue, "Chengyue, hurry and inform the disciples to be on full alert from now on. I reckon that there will be strong enemies coming soon. Be prepared to drag Ethereal Peak in. Also, send more men to move all the precious items in the manor to the secret chamber. If anything happens, we'll defend against the enemies with the mountain. This manor is easy to attack but hard to defend. We can only rely on Ethereal Peak. Oh right, also, find someone to send the young mistress to Ethereal Peak. This has to be done first." Zhang Qingyue's expression froze when he heard that. He hurriedly accepted the order and was about to leave. Peng stopped him and whispered in his ear. Zhang Chengyue was shocked and puzzled. He asked, "Master, are we really going to do this?" Peng nodded. "Let's do it. It's either the fish dies or the net breaks. Even if we die, we'll make sure that their efforts are in vain." "But Master, will this person succeed?" "Sigh, man proposes, God disposes. Who knows? Zhang Chengyue nodded and left with the order. Peng sighed as he watched Zhang Chengyue leave in a hurry. Then, he took a deep breath and tidied his clothes before walking steadily into the Divine Secrets Hall. In the Divine Secrets Hall, 2 tall wooden coffins were placed in the middle. Although the sun was shining brightly and a lot of sunlight shone in, it was still desolate. The Divine Secrets Hall's Xiu Kuan and 2 white-haired elders stood beside the coffins with their hands clasped behind their backs. They looked sad. Big Bro Hu and Li Lauer stood on the other side, staring at their 2 junior brothers in the coffins. No one knew what they were thinking. Only old Fifth Lu held onto Su Laoyu's hand like a child. Tears streamed down his face. Peng quietly walked to a corner of the coffins. He did not speak and just looked at it quietly, as if he was reminiscing about the past. The entire Divine Secrets Hall had long lost its former solemnity. Only sorrow filled the entire hall. After a while, old Fifth Lu had cried enough. He jumped up, wiped his tears and ran to Peng. He tugged at Peng's clothes and shouted, "Lao Lu, who did it? Was it the bald donkeys from the Dalan Temple? Which one? I must settle this with him today so that 6th brother can rest in peace in the underworld." Peng looked at Lu Qingyang and said softly, "Lao Lu, calm down and listen to me." "Calm down my ass. How can I calm down?" Lao Lu and Lao Lu were killed and they even sent someone to their doorstep. Isn't this a slap to the Misty School's face? If I don't take revenge, my surname is no longer Lu. Lao Lu, tell me who it is. Is it Chongqing or Chongqing? Did Chongqing do it himself? Peng said with a gloomy face. The fatal injuries on Lao Lu and Lao Lu were caused by Zhang San from the Righteous Alliance. However, it was said that there were monks involved. I suspect that the Dalan Temple was involved. Zhang San? This ruffian has never interfered with our Misty School. How dare he do this? I'm going to find him. After old Fifth Lu finished speaking, he swung his arm and was about to rush out. How could Peng let him go? He pulled him back and advised, "Lao Lu, where are you going to find him? Are you going to kill your way to the Righteous Alliance's main peak? Even if it's the Righteous Alliance's righteous peak, so what? At the very least, I'm about 200 pounds. I'm going to go against the Righteous Alliance." Old Fifth Lu was full of pride. He threw Peng's hand away and was about to leave. At this moment, Big Boss Hu scolded, "Lao Lu, stop. Don't you think it's chaotic now? Do you want us to worry about you? Do you want us to watch you get sent back by someone else?" Old Fifth Lu listened to Big Boss Hu the most. Naturally, he didn't dare to move half a step. He only said loudly, "But Big Brother Lao Lu and Lao Lu." After saying that, he stomped his feet vigorously. In the end, he squatted down and used his fists to hit the ground. After a few hits, blood dripped from his fists. Seeing this, Big Boss Hu sighed and didn't stop him. Peng walked over and patted Lu Qingyang's shoulder, saying, "Lao Lu, get up. Don't worry, we'll definitely avenge Lao Lu and Lao Lu. Even if we have to sacrifice all of our Misty School's resources, we'll kill our way to the Righteous Alliance's peak." Good. Lu Qingyang immediately stood up. He ignored the blood on his hands and asked, "When are we leaving?" Peng smiled bitterly. "Lao Lu, don't worry. Even if we don't kill our way to the Righteous Alliance's peak, they'll immediately send us to our door." "Is that so?" Big Boss Hu and Old Fifth Lu asked in unison. However, while Lu Qingyang was pleasantly surprised, Hu Yuni was somewhat astonished. "What's going on here? Lao Lu, tell us in detail." Big Boss Hu frowned and asked. After Peng explained the matter in detail, Big Boss Hu frowned even more and said, "If that's the case, our Misty School is now facing the most serious situation. If anything goes wrong, we'll be in danger of being exterminated. However, why would the Righteous Alliance join hands with the Dalan Temple?" Peng smiled bitterly. "I'm just guessing. I don't have any real evidence. Maybe that baldy is just a baldy? Our Misty School can't afford to offend either of these 2 sections. Just one of them is enough for us to deal with. Let alone 2 sections. I can't find any reason for the 2 sects to join hands against our Misty School. Could it be that they're shifting the blame to others? What Big Brother said makes sense. There's another possibility, which is the Tenryu sect." Hearing this, Hu Yuni gasped and said, "The Tenryu sect is a colossus. It's an existence that can contend with the entire righteous alliance. When did we get into such trouble? Openg explained, Big brother, there's only one possibility. If it's the Tenryu sect, they wouldn't be so troublesome. They could just directly attack us. This method isn't their style. But if it's not them, then it's the righteous alliance. The Grand Heaven Earth Hand isn't something that ordinary people can imitate. Yes, Big brother, it's most likely the righteous alliance. But they have no reason to do such a heinous thing in Jianghu. Could it be? At this point, the two of them said in unison, it's the secret plane? But we've kept the news about the secret plane very well. Even the hallmasters know very little about it. How could they leak it? Alas, Big brother, we didn't leak it, but we can't guarantee that the Yanming villa, the Tan family, and the Wan Jianfeng didn't leak it. But it's not very likely. Yanming Jusher is an extremely cautious person. His Yanming villa is not easy for outsiders to enter. The Tan family is a big family that practices martial arts. It's even harder to sneak in than the Misty School. Wan Chengjiu of the Wan Jianfeng is even more scheming. He even spies on the Five-Claw Peak. How could he leak the news? I estimate that there are no more than 5 people on his side who know about the secret plane. Alas, Big brother, there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. We've been operating the secret plane for 3 or 4 years and have reaped endless benefits from it. In recent years, the development of the Misty School has relied on the medicinal materials in the secret plane. It's hard to guarantee that no one will find out. Moreover, we've also obtained the life-prolonging pill from the secret plane. Such a heaven-defying thing will definitely shorten one's life if we have it. Misfortune is a blessing in disguise. The ancients didn't deceive us. Chapter 334. When the two of them analyzed up to this point, they had already determined that the news of the secret plane must have been leaked, which attracted the attention of the Righteous Alliance. AI, success is because of the secret plane, failure is also because of the secret plane. Hu Yuni sighed. Earlier, when they obtained the treasures of the secret plane, they had naively fantasized that if there was a critical moment like today, they would hand over the map and the life-prolonging pill. A wise man submits to circumstances and can barely survive the crisis of the sect being exterminated, even if they had to be a coward, so what? However, the current situation developed greatly beyond their initial expectations. The Righteous Alliance actually acted ruthlessly and destroyed 2 of the Misty Six Tigers in one fell swoop. This deep hatred had already been formed. How could there be any room for negotiation? Could it be that the Righteous Alliance had the idea of exterminating the Misty School? Could it be that they were not afraid of the other sect's attention? At this time, Hu Yuni did not need to think about which power leaked the news of the secret plane, nor did he need to let Openg send people to investigate this news, nor did he need to ask Openg about the whereabouts of the map and the life-prolonging pill. All these doubts could only be asked in the future when the Misty School was able to survive. Now, the only thing they needed to do was to face the Righteous Alliance, who they did not know when they would attack. This was a martial arts sect that rose again after the Immortal Tao was annihilated. In fact, if Openg and others blamed all the crimes on the secret plane, it may not be completely correct. As a martial arts sect, the Righteous Alliance had long been aware of the Immortal Tao and had long coveted the Immortal Tao inheritance. The previous Xianxia Long family was just the tip of the iceberg of the Righteous Alliance's Immortal Tao inheritance. The Misty School, as a sect with thousands of years of inheritance, had been in decline for a long time and had long been targeted by the Righteous Alliance. If it was not for fear of the other sects with Immortal Tao inheritance, the Righteous Alliance would have already made a move on the Misty School. And this secret plane was just a fuse. Even if there was no secret plane, sooner or later, the Righteous Alliance would inevitably make a move on the Misty School. Who told the Misty School to have the Immortal Tao inheritance but was unable to protect it? This annexation of the Misty School was nothing more than a drill that the Righteous Alliance had been preparing for a long time. Openg continued, Big brother, second brother, fifth brother, the Righteous Alliance came in a menacing manner. First, they reduced our forces in the periphery of our Misty School. Then, they set up a trap to make us lose our brothers. I presume that they have been plotting this for a long time. Moreover, they sent the remains of fourth brother and sixth brother back. This is not only a blow to our confidence, but also a signal for us to attack. I estimate that the Righteous Alliance will launch their final attack on us tomorrow at the latest. Aha! Old Fifth Lu shouted and jumped up. Third brother, I'll go get my axe. I'll guard the archway. I'd like to see if that yellow-faced Zhang San can step on my body and walk into the Misty School. With that, he ran out of the Divine Mechanics Hall like the wind. Peng raised his hand to stop him, but Hu Yuni said, "Let Old Fifth go." Then he said to Li Jian, "Second brother, go and watch him. Don't let him do anything stupid." Li Jian didn't say anything and chased after him. After the two left, Hu Yuni asked, "Third brother, do you think we should send a message to the Dalan Temple and the Cult of Incense? Ask them to come and help us?" Well, the Dalan Temple hasn't been cleared of suspicion. They might not. Maybe it's just a bald man. Even if it's a monk, it doesn't mean that the Dalan Temple is involved. After all, they are all part of the path of immortality. They might help us. Help us? Peng sneered. According to the records, when the Shundao sect was destroyed, the Dalan Temple didn't help us. That was then and this is now. If we don't have the Dalan Temple and the Cult of Incense's help, even if we barely make it through tomorrow, the Misty School's vitality will be greatly damaged. Why don't we give it a try? Peng sighed. Now that things have come to this, we can only give it a try. The Righteous Alliance has been plotting for a long time. They might not let us send out a message. Then Peng said to Hall Master Shur of the Divine Mechanics Hall, "Hall Master Shur, send a few elite disciples in groups to the Dalan Temple and the Cult of Incense to ask for help." Shur Yukuan cupped his hands and said yes. Then, he quickly left with two elders. For a moment, the Divine Mechanics Hall fell into silence. Peng and Hu Yuni were like stone statues. They stood in front of the coffins and stared at the two people who seemed to be sleeping. For a long time, they didn't say a word. After an unknown period of time seemed to have lost its value in grief. No matter how much time passed, it couldn't make up for the memories. Suddenly, Peng opened his mouth and said softly, "Big brother." Third brother sigh. In the past, when I saw other people go through life and death, I always felt that it was because of love. But now that it's my turn, I know what it means to be a hero with a short breath. I watched you all grow up. Us 6 brothers have roamed the Jianghu together since we were young. How many storms of blood have we safely walked through? Of course, we've long held our heads in our hands. But who would have thought that when the Misty School was flourishing, something like this would happen? I thought I would be the first to lie in the coffin. That's right, big brother. Parting is inevitable in life. I didn't know that death was so close to us, forcing us to be unprepared. Hu Yuni sighed but didn't say anything. Peng continued, "Big brother, I have an extremely important matter to entrust to you." Entrust? Third brother, what do you mean? It's like this, big brother. This time, the Righteous Alliance came prepared. They must have made a meticulous plan. Our Misty School hastily accepted the challenge. Moreover, their strength is clearly not on the same level. I'm worried that our Misty School won't be able to escape this misfortune. Hu Yuni didn't reply. He seemed to know that Peng wasn't lying. Big brother, the Misty School can be destroyed, but the Misty School's legacy can't be lost. As the leader of the Misty School, I can't abandon my brothers at this time. The heavy responsibility of protecting the Misty School's descendants will be entrusted to Big Brother. This, Hu Yuni muttered to himself. He wasn't an impulsive person and was very clear about the severity of the matter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given the position of leader of the Misty School to Peng. In his heart, he was extremely willing to stay and avenge his 2 junior brothers. But logically speaking, he also knew that the most important thing now was to preserve the Misty School's legacy. Can't 5th brother go? Hu Yuni probed. What do you think, big brother? Peng didn't give a direct answer. He knew that big brother who was very clear about this. Sure enough, Hu Yuni sighed again. I want to kill the thief, but I'm powerless. Then Peng said, Big brother, go and prepare. Bring all the martial arts manuals of our Misty School. Also, pick out some of the talented low-level disciples. Forget it. Take away all the commoner level 1 and level 2 disciples. They won't be of much help here. Even if they aren't talented, they'll still be a spark of our Misty School. I'll also take some of the elite disciples to protect you. The Righteous Alliance will definitely guard against us. However, It is extremely difficult for them to guard against the secret passageway at the back of Misty Peak. Big brother, after you are ready, just wait in the secret passageway. If something unexpected happens, just rush out immediately. No matter how many people the Righteous Alliance has, they won't be able to surround the entire Misty Peak. Once we rush out, big brother, I'll leave it to you. Take the spark of our Misty School and find a place to hide and accumulate strength. We'll think about making a comeback when we have the chance. Alright, big brother, during this period, let's see how the Dalan Temple and the incense cult react. If it's not necessary, it's better to avoid contact with them. Everyone in the Jianghu is a wolf. Yes, third brother, I know this. Although I don't have the talent and vision of a faction leader like you, I'm still confident in protecting these little bastards. But, third brother, I gave you the position of faction leader back then. Today, you'll have to take the blame for me. Big brother, as the faction leader, I have to take the blame for the entire faction. I already had this awareness when I took over the Misty School from Master. Big brother, don't worry. Maybe things aren't that bad. Maybe the Dalan Temple and the incense cult have already noticed the Righteous Alliance's movements and are on their way to help. These words were extremely unrealistic. Hu Yuni also knew that he was just comforting himself. He walked over and patted O Peng's shoulder saying, "Third brother, take care." At this moment, O Peng didn't have the dignity of a faction leader at all. He was just like a child who had just started learning martial arts. He stood there obediently and smiled saying, "Don't worry, big brother. I know." Hu Yuni looked at him with tears in his eyes. If nothing unexpected happened, this would be a life and death parting of the two brothers who were as close as father and son. O Peng couldn't hold it in anymore. He reached out his hand and Hu Yuni reached out to hold it. It was just like when O Peng was young and Hu Yuni took his hand to the top of Misty Peak to teach him martial arts. Big brother, be careful. Third brother, be careful too. Out of all the words he could say, he could only say this ordinary sentence. Immediately after, the two brothers let go of each other and laughed loudly. What joy is there in being a great man who can support the heavens and earth? What is there to fear in death? Life is like a floating cloud that comes with the wind and goes with the wind. With that, Hu Yuni flicked his sleeves and rushed out of the door. O Peng stood there in a daze for a moment, feeling the loneliness after a feast. Just as he was about to turn around and look at his brothers in the coffins, he heard hurried footsteps outside the door. At this moment, O Peng couldn't even be bothered to frown as he walked slowly towards the entrance of the Divine Secrets Hall. He had just taken a few steps when he saw Zhang Chengyue rushing in with a nervous expression. Zhang Chengyue was originally extremely flustered. However, when he saw O Peng's unhurried manner, he was stunned at first. Then he slowed down and lowered his voice, saying, "Big faction leader, things have taken a turn for the worse." O Peng smiled first and said, "Chengyue, have you done what I asked you to do?" "Yes, big faction leader. Other than the matter of eldest martial uncle finding someone to take over the secret martial arts manuals, everything else has been done." "Good. Chengyue, as the eldest disciple of the Misty School's headmaster, you should have the resolve to surpass others. I know that you're handling the sex affairs with ease, but you lack the tempering in times of danger. This is a chance given to you by the heavens. As long as you get through this crisis, you'll be able to look down on others, and I can also rest assured that the entire Misty School will be in your hands." Chapter 335. Zhang Chengyue listened with his hands down and nodded repeatedly. How could he not know in his heart that at this time, other than O Peng, he, the chief disciple, should be the one to straighten his back in front of all the disciples? He did not have the slightest room to retreat. He was also clear about what eldest martial uncle wanted to do, but this very important matter could not be done by him. He could only stand beside Master with a smile. This was the pride of a direct disciple, but also the sorrow of a direct disciple. After O Peng finished speaking, Zhang Chengyue regained his composure and said in a low voice, "Great sect master, the disciples of the Divine Mechanics Hall have sent news that there are countless masked people surrounding the Misty Mountain Villa. They are advancing towards us. They failed to break through the encirclement and lost a few brothers. They have already retreated. What about the back mountain of the Misty Mountain? Have they found any traces of the enemy?" "Not at the moment. I have already sent people to check. Good. Quickly inform eldest martial uncle and let him take action as soon as possible. Also, inform all the brothers in the sect to prepare for the enemy. Yes, master. After hearing this, Xianxia quickly walked out. His footsteps were very steady, and he was more confident than when he had just entered. Looking at Xianxia's back, Peng smiled for the first time of the day. Danger was not always a bad thing. The Misty School after its nirvanic rebirth might have a new atmosphere. However, he still had a trace of doubt in his heart. The army was already at the border and they were about to meet with weapons, but the Righteous Alliance still wanted to cover their faces. What kind of medicine were they selling? After thinking, Peng pulled himself together and quickly walked out of the Divine Mechanics Hall. In the Misty Mountain Villa, from the memorial archway to the square, the disciples had already formed a formation. They were all holding various weapons and were waiting for battle. In the pavilions behind the square, there were also many disciples moving things and setting up traps. Although there were many people and things were complicated, they were still in good order. There was no unnecessary panic, just like the tension before the battle. Seeing such a situation, Peng was extremely gratified. Even though these disciples did not have as much information as Xianxia, causing them to feel a heavy psychological pressure, but this passion to serve the ethereal sect, as long as they could get through this hurdle, would definitely be synonymous with iron and blood in the future. In an instant, Peng was even more confident that he could survive this ordeal. Before Peng could return to the meeting hall, Xianxia came over to report, Sect Master, according to the scouts of the Divine Mechanics sect, not only has the front of Misty Manor been surrounded, but there are also traces of enemies at the back of Misty Peak. There are even Righteous Tao Alliance disciples at the back of the mountain? How many are there? There's a lot of vegetation at the back of the mountain, so I can't see clearly. However, they're about to surround us. Where are your eldest martial uncle and the others? Disciple has already informed eldest martial uncle of the situation. They are preparing to enter the secret passage. All right. Quickly send someone to inform them to break out of the encirclement immediately. If they are surrounded, it will be even more difficult for them to break out. Let the disciples of the various halls mix with the elite disciples. Let them be led by the hall masters of the various halls. Let the female disciples of the Mingtsue Hall, the third-generation disciples, and the other disciples set up a defense on the Misty Peak. Their martial arts are limited. If they face the enemy at the front line, they will only be killed. Xianxia accepted the order and left. He returned not long after. Peng frowned and asked, Chengyue, don't you think the Righteous Tao Alliance is being too ostentatious this time? Our Misty School, Misty Mountain Manor, and Misty Peak occupy such a large area. They actually want to surround us. Don't tell me Zhang San of the Righteous Tao Alliance is not afraid of the Dalan Temple and the incense cult? What if the two sects send a mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind? Won't the Righteous Tao Alliance go for wool but come home shorn? Xianxia was also puzzled and said, That's right, sect leader. Disciple has also been thinking about this problem. Don't tell me the Righteous Tao Alliance also had a fortuitous encounter in the past few years? Even if they have more disciples than us, if they kill 1,000, they will lose 800 of their own. If they don't have full confidence, why would they dare to do such a desperate thing? That's right. There's something fishy about it. That's right, Chengyue. Did you notice that the Righteous Tao Alliance is covering their faces in broad daylight? Aren't they trying to hide something? Ha ha ha, sect leader is right. This kind of small fry, I'm afraid they don't dare to see the light. Both master and disciple laughed heartily. However, their laughter hid deep sorrow. If something was out of the ordinary, there must be something fishy about it. It's just that they didn't know about it. Time passed bit by bit and it was already close to noon. In front of the memorial archway, there were already many masked people in martial attire. They were all armed and just by looking at their figures, one could tell that they were all valiant people. It was as if they were waiting for something. Sure enough, when noon came, a whistling arrow rose from the back mountain of the Misty Peak. With a loud bang, the masked man immediately shouted and drew his weapon, rushing towards the Misty Mountain Manor. Like a tidal wave, he charged towards the defensive line that the Misty School's disciples had already set up. Hearing the whistling arrow from the back mountain, Peng's expression changed. He immediately said calmly, Xianxia, how is the defensive line at the back mountain? Don't worry, sect leader. I've already sent the elite disciples over. The back mountain is easy to defend and hard to attack. It shouldn't be a problem. Peng nodded slightly. He knew that the back mountain of the Misty Peak was mostly steep cliffs and there were many paths that didn't lead up. They only needed to send a few elite disciples to block the enemy. The battle was very fierce. Not long after, there were casualties and screams could be heard from time to time. Peng stood there with his hands behind his back. His eyes were slightly narrowed and his teeth were slightly clenched. He had a rare impulse in his heart. He really wanted to swing his sword and fight side by side with his brothers in the sect. However, he knew that a sect leader wasn't meant to swing his sword. Sensing the change in Peng's expression, Xianxia said, "Sect leader, I'll take command here. You should go to the Misty Peak first. Fifth uncle and miss are both there. You can only take command of the situation if you go there." Peng nodded slightly and said, "Then I'll leave this place to you. Xianxia, if things don't work out, retreat to the Misty Peak. As long as there's life, there's hope." "Yes, sect leader. I understand." After saying that, Peng looked at the stalemate of the battle and returned to the Misty Peak. Along the way, Peng saw many disciples with weapons lying in ambush by the side of the road and behind the rocks, waiting for the enemy to attack. Looking at the nervous expressions of many female disciples, Peng shook his head slightly. As he was walking, Peng suddenly saw a figure that he had almost forgotten. He waved his hand and said, "Jianghu, come here for a moment." "Sect leader." Xianxia walked over quickly. Peng asked, "Xianxia, why are you here?" Xianxia said in surprise, "I heard from the sect leader that the third-generation disciples are required to set up a defense in the mountains. So I came. My master and the others are in front with the sect leader." Oh! Peng realized that although Xianxia was old, he had just joined the sect and could only be considered a third-generation disciple. Moreover, his martial arts were indeed weak. If he fought the enemy in the front line, he would be killed within a few moves. So he smiled and said, "Didn't the sect leader choose the first and second-ranked disciples? Why didn't you leave?" Sect leader. Xianxia was a little excited. At this time, Peng still remembered him. How could he not be grateful? He said, "My talent is limited. It's better not to compete with those children. Besides, I have the strength to fight. I can contribute to the Misty School when the Misty School is in danger. I'm willing to live and die with the Misty School. I'd rather die together with the Misty School than drag out an ignoble existence." Peng nodded and patted him on the shoulder saying, "Good. However, your martial arts are indeed weak and you're dragging out an ignoble existence. It's not necessarily a bad thing for a hero." After saying that, he left Xianxia, who was still pondering the meaning of his words, and went up the peak. On the Misty Peak, the autumn noon sun was still scorching. Even with the whistling mountain wind, it still made people feel uncomfortable. Many family members and disciples of the Misty School had already gathered here. Seeing Peng come up, the sect leader's wife, who had never asked about the affairs of the sect, took the initiative to ask quietly, "How is it? What's the situation down there?" Peng smiled and said, "Madam, don't worry. It's just a clown. How can he be a match for our Misty School?" The sect leader's wife smiled and did not ask any more questions. At this time, Yen walked over and said, "Big brother." Peng looked at Yen kindly and said, "Yen, you don't blame Big brother, right?" Yen was extremely intelligent. How could she not understand Peng's meaning? She smiled and said, "Big brother, Yen, has lived under Big brother's protection since I was young. Today, when the sect is in danger, I should go through thick and thin with the entire Misty School." Peng smiled and said, "Yen has such feelings. Our Misty School's danger is not for weak girls like you to bear. However, you're the sister of the sect leader of the Misty School. How can the Righteous Alliance let you go? If we let you go, the Righteous Alliance will definitely send more people to search for you. It's not safe at all. On the contrary, Big brother and the others won't be able to escape. Therefore, rather than leaving you outside, it's better to let you stay by Big brother's side. You don't have the strength to truss a chicken. Even Zhang San of the Righteous Alliance can't force himself on you." "I understand, Big brother. You don't have to explain. Yan's face was obedient. However, her slightly thin body under the hot sun and the mountain wind made people feel pity for her. Without waiting for Yan to leave, Lu Qingyang and old Fifth Lu came over again. Holding a large axe, they arrogantly said, "Third brother, how can you let me go up the mountain? Rather than waiting here, it's better to let me go down the mountain and kill a few righteous alliance thieves with Xianxia and the others." Peng smiled and said, "Old Fifth, I'll need you later. Look, our family members and the disciples of Ming Tsue Hall need your protection. If it weren't for the fact that your martial arts are much better than Xianxia's, how could I let you take on such a heavy responsibility?" Old Fifth Lu opened his mouth and said, "I knew third brother wouldn't be biased. Don't worry. As long as I'm here with this pair of axes, that Zhang San won't be able to take even half a step into Misty Peak." After saying that, he carried his axe and walked to the mountain path, making a one-man can hold back 10,000 men stance. Chapter 336. The Misty Peak was just a place where the disciples of the Misty School used to practice martial arts. There were no houses or anything like that. The Misty School disciples had left in a hurry and did not even take any chairs or other things with them. Peng looked around and casually sat on a rock and closed his eyes to rest. Not long after, a few more disciples came up from the bottom of the mountain and reported their battle results. It was the news that the disciples of the Misty School were retreating in defeat. Peng could no longer sit still. He stood up, walked to the front of the mountain and looked down. The ethereal peak was actually not very high. Although he could not see clearly, he could tell the result of the battle at a glance. The masked members of the Righteous Alliance had already pushed their front line to the back of the meeting hall. The disciples of the Misty School fought with their lives. With every step they took back, there would be disciples of the Righteous Alliance or Misty School lying on the ground. There were many corpses on the square in front of the meeting hall. Peng sighed and turned back to shout, "Where is Aunt Qin?" "Big Sect Master, I'm here." Peng said, "Take half of the female disciples of the Ming Tsue School down the mountain to support Chongyue and the others. Tell them to form a formation in front of the Misty Peak and use the terrain to defend against the enemy. Also, take a look at the situation. If it really doesn't work, retreat back up the mountain." "Yes, Big Sect Master." After hearing this, Aunt Qin led Chang'e and the other disciples down the mountain. The elite disciples at the foot of the mountain saw the female disciples of the Ming Tsue School coming down the mountain to support them. They immediately became spirited and together with the female disciples, they blocked the Righteous Alliance at the foot of the Misty Peak. The battle between sects was far more tragic than the feuds between individuals in the pugilistic world. In just a few moments, many disciples of the Misty School and the Righteous Alliance had lost their lives. On the side of the Misty School, there were experts led by Zhang Chengyue, Wen Wenhai, Lu Mingyue and the others. However, most of the disciples with average martial arts skills had already died under the sword. Even the elite disciples who had undergone special training had lost many of their lives. Many of them were still fighting with injuries. Peng sighed and turned to look at the back of the mountain. Inadvertently, he saw the panoramic view of Pingyang City not far away. He could not help but feel a pang in his heart. Back then, his younger senior brothers loved to watch the lights of Pingyang City at night when they were not practicing martial arts. In the blink of an eye, decades had passed. Everything seemed to have happened just last night. Today, he was separated from his two brothers by life and death. The changes in the world and the cycle of heaven were truly unpredictable. The back of the mountain was peaceful. There were almost no signs of fighting. The main focus of the Righteous Alliance must be in front of the Misty School. The back of the mountain was just to prevent the disciples of the Misty School from escaping. Peng estimated that Hu Yuni should have led a group of disciples through the secret passage by now. Perhaps, they would be lucky enough to avoid the disciples of the Righteous Alliance. Unfortunately, just as he was thinking, he saw a commotion in the back of the mountain. The faint sound of swords clashing could be heard. Wasn't it the direction of the exit of the secret passage? Could it be that the Righteous Alliance knew about the exit of the Misty School's secret passage? However, before Peng could think further, a whistling arrow was heard from the secret passage. Peng was shocked. He hurriedly ran to the front of the mountain. When he looked down, from afar, from the direction of Pingyang City, There were many blurry figures leaping over like bullets. A long howl was heard from one of the figures in front. The sound was so loud that it shook the surroundings. It showed that the person's inner strength was extremely profound. Hearing this long howl, Peng's eyes flashed fiercely. His entire person exuded a shocking murderous aura. At the same time, he circulated his qi in his dantian. A purple color flashed across his face. He also let out a long howl. His aura was not inferior to the former's. After the two long howls, the blurry figures were much closer. There were about 4 or 5 of them in front. They were approaching the main road of the ethereal villa. One look and one could tell that they were people with superb qinggong. Seeing this, Peng felt much more at ease. The person who let out the long howl was the leader of the Righteous Alliance, Zhang San. The few behind him must be the deputy leaders of the Righteous Alliance. Since the main characters had appeared, the ending had to begin. Everything would come to an end. Not long after, Zhang San and the others had arrived at the entrance of the ethereal villa. Zhang San was an old man with a yellow face. He was dressed in hemp clothes. He was not in a hurry to enter the Misty School. Instead, he stopped at the foot of the archway and stared at the two majestic words. After staring for a long time, he waved his hand and led the 4 deputy leaders behind him into the ethereal villa. Ever since Zhang San's roar sounded out, the Righteous Alliance's attacks had also increased, and the number of casualties on both sides had increased by quite a bit. Seeing that the two sides were either fighting one-on-one or ganging up on several people, Zhang San frowned slightly. Soon after, he increased his speed and passed through the intense battle, completely ignoring the Righteous Alliance disciples who were still at a disadvantage. That was soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals. Peng would not brandish his sword here. It was even more impossible for Zhang San to do so. The disciples of the Misty School did not even look at the people who had just entered. Although they had a slight advantage, they did not have the extra energy to deal with other people, not to mention the leaders of the sections. Only when they were going up the mountain did a few low-level disciples try to attack the leaders of the Righteous Alliance with their weapons. However, before the weapons could even reach them, the figures of the leaders had already disappeared. The difference between them was too great. Fortunately, these old men would not lower themselves to the same level as them. After dodging the weapons, they ran away and did not retaliate at all. On the peak of the Misty Peak, Lu Qingyang held 2 broad axes in his hands and stood proudly. Seeing Zhang San approaching, he shouted, "Old Zhang, eat this axe of yours." After he finished speaking, he raised his arm and chopped down with the wheel-sized axe. Although it was only a single move, the force behind it was sharp and the technique was profound. It enveloped the top of Zhang San's head, making it impossible for Zhang San to dodge or evade. Lu Qingyang's move was a bit of a bully. Not to mention that he had the upper hand, while Zhang San was climbing the peak and was at a disadvantage. In fact, even if Zhang San could stop and let this move pass, Lu Qingyang would not do so. Who was Zhang San? He was the leader of the Righteous Alliance. When he did not show his face, his howl could shake the entire place. But when he just showed his face, he was suppressed by others. How could he dare to let others do this? He was indeed a top expert in the Jianghu. When Zhang San saw the broad axe chopping down, he was not nervous at all. He laughed and said, "Leader O, is this how your Misty School treats its guests?" While laughing, his body did not slow down. He stretched out his fan-like right hand and reached up like lightning. He found the right opportunity and slapped to the side. Clang! A muffled sound was heard. It was like an axe hitting a wooden board. Old Fifth Lu's broad axe was slapped to the side by Zhang San's palm. Old Fifth Lu was furious. He did not care about his unstable body. He raised his other hand and was about to chop down. But at this time, Zhang San had already jumped to the peak. He laughed coldly and slapped towards Old Fifth Lu's chest. If this universal hand hit him, wouldn't Old Fifth Lu be the same as the other 2 brothers? Although Old Fifth Lu was reckless, he had also fought in life-and-death situations. He hurriedly blocked the broad axe in front of his chest. Seeing this, Zhang San did not change his move. He directly slapped the broad axe. With the same muffled sound, a huge force penetrated Old Fifth Lu's arm. Old Fifth Lu's body was already unstable. At this moment, his lower body was unstable. He was sent flying back by Zhang San's slap. At this time, a black shadow pulled up. The scabbard in his hand touched Old Fifth Lu's body, eliminating the force of Old Fifth Lu's retreat. Old Fifth Lu's strong body landed steadily. Beside him stood the thin figure of Li Jian. Lu Qingyang naturally looked at the two broad axes in his hands. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. On the two broad axes, there were two distinct palm prints. Zhang San did not look at Lu Qingyang anymore. He raised his head and looked at O Peng. O Peng stood far away and looked at him coldly. When their eyes met, the corners of their eyes faintly trembled. Zhang San smiled and said, "Leader O, is this how you treat your guests?" O Peng was still cold. He said, "When a friend comes, there is good wine. When a wolf comes, there is a hunting knife. Does my Misty School have to sweep the bed and welcome the Righteous Alliance?" Zhang San chuckled and did not answer. A thin old man at the side said loudly, "Since ancient times, the weak are prey to the strong. Only the fittest survive. Your Misty School has been declining for a long time. It's time for the Misty Peak to change its master." O Peng glanced at the old man and said, "So it's the first deputy leader of the Righteous Alliance, Old Master Chai. Every word you say is true. You are right. In this Jianghu, it has always been a place where fists speak. Old Master Chai's intention is to decide the fate of our Misty School?" Old Master Chai, Chai Qingrong said proudly, "That's my intention. If you want to speak, you need to have the strength to speak. This humble one wants to see if Old Master Chai has the ability to speak." A cold voice sounded. It was the black-clothed Li Jian. Chai Qingrong drew his sword from his waist and sneered, "This Chai has long heard of the Misty Seven Swords. Today is the right time. Why not let this Chai broaden his horizons?" "As you wish, there is no need to invite." After saying that, Li Jian threw away his scabbard and stabbed out with his sword. Chai Qingrong saw this and laughed angrily. "Good, good, good. The waves of the river will surpass one another." The long sword in his hand was also thrust out. The two immediately began to fight. Lu Qingyang saw this and waved the axe in his hand. He said loudly, "Which boy will fight with this grandpa?" The several deputy leaders of the Righteous Alliance looked at each other. None of them wanted to go forward. Of course, whoever went forward would have to call the other grandpa. A moment later, a black-faced rough man stepped out from the crowd. He held a copper staff and shouted like thunder, "You brute, don't try to take advantage of me with your mouth. Your grandpa me will teach you a lesson." Old Fifth Lu looked over and saw that it was the Righteous Alliance's fifth deputy leader, Mi Kong. He couldn't help but sneer. "I was wondering who it was. Isn't it the Mi Kong from a few years ago who fought to a draw with me? Come, come, come. Let me see if you have improved in these few years." Chapter 337. Seeing that Lu Qingyang was also fighting with Mi Kong, who was holding a bronze staff, Zhang San smiled and said, "Sect Leader O, this humble one would also like to exchange pointers with Sect Leader O. Would it be possible for you to give me some pointers?" O Peng said, "This humble one has the same intention. I would like to ask Sect Leader Zhang for the blood feud between my two junior brothers." "Ha ha ha." Zhang San laughed. "How can one not suffer when one is in Jianghu? Sect Leader O, bring it on. This humble one awaits." Seeing this, O Peng let out a cold snort. Without exerting any strength in his legs, his body floated towards Zhang San like a willow branch. When he was close enough, he stretched out his right hand and pressed two fingers together towards Zhang San's chest pressure point. Zhang San did not dare to be careless. His body tilted slightly and his palms fluttered, displaying a set of grand heaven-earth hand, together with O Peng's secret finger technique. The group of 5 from the Righteous Tao Alliance had only ascended the Misty Peak for a short while when 3 of them entered and stood together with the 3 from the Misty Sect. The 6 people who were fighting in the Misty Peak were the leaders of the 2 sects and were also the top experts in the pugilistic world. The battle on the Misty Peak was not only a test of individual martial arts but also the survival of the sect. Who would dare to hold back? The 6 people were all showing off what they had learned, displaying all sorts of strange and wonderful moves. In a short while, danger was everywhere, and there was no longer the usual restraint of a martial arts exchange. Although there were many disciples from the Misty School on the peak, they were all people with low martial arts skills. There were also many women, and they knew the key to this battle. Although they were very worried, they did not dare to get close. They all retreated far away, fearing that they would affect the situation. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there did not seem to be any changes in the situation. They were evenly matched, but even so, it was enough to show the strength of the Misty School. After all, the three leaders of the Righteous Alliance, except for Mekong, were all old men. The cultivation of internal energy could not be forced, and there were very few shortcuts. The older one was, the more refined the cultivation of internal energy. The three from the Misty School were all in their 40s, much younger than their opponents. Even if they were young and vigorous, they could not make up for the lack of internal energy. But now they were evenly matched, which was really rare. At this time between the two of them, sword light flashed. Li Jian shouted, and the purple light on his face brightened. He lifted his sword and slowly chopped towards Chai Qingrong. Chai Qingrong frowned. The two of them had fought for a while and were familiar with each other's sword moves. Li Jian's chop was strange, and he had never used it before. It was also very rare for swords to have such a chop, not to mention his sword that was wrapped in a scabbard. How could it hurt someone? But Chai Qingrong was an old man who had lived for decades, and was used to being cautious. He did not dare to be careless, and raised his sword to meet the attack, preparing to block this extremely crude sword move. But just as the two swords were about to meet, Chai Qingrong suddenly realized that there was a faint green light on the scabbard that Li Jian stretched out. He did not know what it was, but his heart tightened, and he knew that it was not good. Sure enough, when the two swords met, there was no clanging sound like before. Instead, there was a muffled, "Kacha" sound. Chai Qingrong's hand lightened, and the sword in his hand was easily cut in half by Li Jian's scabbard. Chai Qingrong was greatly shocked, and he suddenly shouted, "Sword light!" At this time, the sword in Li Jian's hand did not decrease in power, and the sword light in the scabbard became even brighter. It actually spat out more than half a foot, and directly chopped towards Chai Qingrong's face. Seeing this, Chai Qingrong immediately exerted strength in his legs, and desperately dodged to the side. He wanted to dodge the sword that would cut open his abdomen, but the green light on Li Jian's sword was very precise. By the time he realized it, it was already too late. Chai Qingrong was about to be cut in half by Li Jian. At this time, a large hand suddenly stretched out from the side, grabbed Chai Qingrong's arm, and pulled hard. Just as he was pulled away from Li Jian's sword, it only saved his life. Chai Qingrong's entire right arm was easily cut off by Li Jian's sword light. Chai Qingrong was still in shock, and a wave of intense pain attacked him. He shouted loudly, and fainted. At the place where his arm was cut off, blood spurted out like a fountain. The person who saved Chai Qingrong was the Righteous Alliance's second vice-alliance leader, Yu Zhanfei. Yu Zhanfei did not dare to be negligent, and hurriedly used his finger to seal a few major acupoints on Chai Qingrong's shoulder. Only then was the blood stopped. The third vice-alliance leader, Yan Yang, also hurried over. He took out medicine for wounds and applied it on Chai Qingrong's internal and external treatment. Li Jian coldly looked at the three people busying themselves. He held the scabbard in his hand, and the tip of the sword pointed to the ground. He did not say a word. Just as Chai Qingrong cried out, "Sword light," Mekong also heard it. His heart trembled and he secretly said, "As expected." At this time, Lu Qingyang saw the other's mind relax. He took a deep breath and also shouted, "Rice worm, watch my flying axe." Finished speaking, the axe in his right hand flew out like a hidden weapon, flying straight towards Mekong's head. Then, he took advantage of the situation, and a big fist the size of an alms bowl followed. If it was an ordinary axe, this kind of move would only add to the ridicule, and could be dodged with just a tilt of the head. But Lu Qingyang's move made Mekong feel his mind go blank. That axe seemed to be flashing lightning on the horizon, carrying the power of a thunderbolt, like the weight of Mount Tai, with an unavoidable power. Seeing that the axe was close to him, it would be too late if he did not dodge it. Mekong was also amazing. At the critical moment, he forcibly restrained his mind, broke free from the invisible shackles, squatted down, and slightly tilted his head. The huge axe whistled past his ear with a whoosh sound, startling Mekong and making him break out in a cold sweat. However, before he had time to get up, a huge fist came from afar, getting bigger and bigger, and was about to hit his head. Lu Qingyang's fist was filled with hatred. The internal strength may not be comparable to Zhang Xiaohua's 10,000 jin, but if it hit, no one would doubt that peach blossoms would immediately bloom. Mi Kong was also amazing. Seeing the fist coming with the sound of wind, he knew it was powerful. He hurriedly used an iron plank bridge, his upper body leaning back, and then threw away the copper rod in his hand. He used his empty hand to support Lu Qingyang's arm, but when Mi Kong did not fully use the iron plank bridge, Lu Qingyang's fist had already hit the front of his jaw. At this time, his palms were just holding Lu Qingyang's arm. However, when he used his strength to support Lu Qingyang's arm, he suddenly found that Lu Qingyang's arm was like a rock, and only slightly moved up. Mi Kong's heart was screaming, but it was useless to scream now. With a blunt sound, the fist hit Mi Kong's jaw. Although Mi Kong was also a master of internal strength, he had not yet trained his face and jaw to the point of iron. How could he withstand a blow of thousands of jin? He only felt darkness in front of his eyes, and then golden sparks flew everywhere. He fainted, and his body also fell far away with the momentum of the fist. If it was flat ground it would be fine, but it was the top of Piaomiao Peak. The place where Mi Kong fell was empty. He rolled down the mountain path, and whether he was dead or alive was unknown. Yu Zhanfei, who had just sealed Chai Qingrong's acupoints, also paid some attention to this. Seeing this, he left Chai Qingrong to Yan Yang, and hurriedly used his Qinggong to catch up. He wanted to save the unconscious Mi Kong. When two flowers bloomed, another branch bloomed. Another battle. Just as Chai Qingrong shouted, "Sword Qi," Zhang Sen also heard it. He couldn't help but panic, and his eyes involuntarily looked to the side. Seeing this, Peng's eyes were full of mockery. His left hand, which was hidden in his sleeve, suddenly pointed at Zhang San's Dantian acupoint. Although Zhang San was a little distracted, he was still an observant and alert person. He immediately dodged and clapped his palms together. The Daqian Kuan palm came up. Seeing that Peng's finger was about to touch Zhang San's palm, Peng's finger retracted and clenched into a fist. At the same time, two fingers of his right hand also pointed out. Zhang San had no choice but to separate one of his palms to meet Peng's right hand. Just as one of Zhang San's palms was separated, Peng's left index finger stretched out again and pointed at Zhang San's Daqian Kuan palm. The palm that was able to leave a handprint on Lu Qingyang's steel axe was suddenly pierced, and a finger-sized hole appeared. Invisible sword Qi. Zhang San was also shocked. He didn't dare to continue fighting, and wanted to retreat. But how could Peng let him go? His figure flew up, following him like a shadow. The two fingers of his right hand were also like a sword, and went straight for Zhang San's dantian. Zhang Sen didn't dare to let him hit. The dantian acupoint was the essence of internal strength. If an ordinary expert used internal strength to hit it and break it, then all their internal strength would be gone, let alone an expert like Peng. If the invisible sword Qi entered his body, wouldn't it immediately turn Zhang San into a cripple? At this time, among the group of 5 people who had just climbed up the misty peak, Yu Zhanfei's figure had just disappeared from the peak. Only Yan Yang was still supporting the unconscious Chai Qingrong. Yan Yang saw that the Alliance Master situation was critical, so he didn't care about taking care of Chai Qingrong. He placed her on the ground, drew the long sword from his waist, and slightly shook it, wanting to rush up to help. To the side, Li Jian, whose sword was pointed to the ground, looked at the triumphant Lu Qingyang and couldn't help but deeply frown. Looking at the level of martial arts of the righteous Dao Alliance's Alliance Masters, it was only so. His own 6 brothers had all taken qi-generating pills and bone-strengthening pills, so their internal strength was extraordinary. Since these Alliance Masters couldn't beat him, how could they kill Old 4 and Old 6? Only if several Alliance Masters rushed up and bullied them with numbers would they be able to succeed. Thinking of this, Li Jian's eyes flashed with a cold light. The scabbard in his hand was also drawn, and he slowly walked up. The situation immediately became 2 against 2. Yan Yang hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to make a move. At this time, Zhang Sen opened his mouth. He fled to the back of the mountain and loudly shouted, "If you guys don't come out, I will be seriously injured by Peng." Seeing this, Peng was also stunned. His internal strength was now profound, and he had already paid attention to the back of the mountain, but he didn't see any movement. However, things were out of his expectations. Following Zhang San's cry for help, from the back of the misty peak, several people jumped up. Chapter 338. Since the people who jumped up from behind the mountain were able to escape Peng's detection, they must be experts in the Jianghu. Peng originally thought that they were the hidden experts of the Righteous Alliance, but when he saw the 3 old monks standing in the wind with a majestic aura, and the masked woman dressed in palace attire beside them, as well as 3 other short and strong old men who looked similar, Peng could not help but change his expression. He raised his arm and pointed at them, saying, "You? How can you collude with the Righteous Alliance?" This sentence was said with surprise at first, but in the end, it was said with gritted teeth. Yes, those 3 monks were the Dalan Temple's elder Chong Shang, the Arhut Hall's elder Chong Xing, and the Disciplinary Hall's elder Chong Gung. The other 4 were the famous and mysterious members of the Dalan Temple. Although the woman in the palace dress was veiled, since she was able to appear with the Dalan Temple's elder Chong Shang, who else could she be but the leader of the Dalan Temple, Abbess Jing-yi? The 3 similar-looking old men in hemp clothes were the outstanding figures of the previous generation of Jianghu. The 3 of them were secretly cultivated by the Dalan Temple and knew a set of joint formations. In their early years, when they roamed Jianghu, they had never been defeated and were known as the world's #1. How could Peng not be shocked by such a spectacular lineup? Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the 2 major sects, which were both immortal Dao legacies and specialized in martial Dao, would actually work together with the Righteous Dao Alliance to deal with Ethereal Sect. Even though he had just sent a disciple to ask for help, even though he knew that there were monks among the attackers, he still tried his best to exclude this thought. Moreover, even though he had a faint feeling that by taking down the Luo Shui gang, he had already offended the Dalan Temple's disciplinary hall and that the Dalan Temple might intervene, he never thought that the Dalan Temple, which had never shown its face in Jianghu, would also intervene. In an instant, Peng understood why the members of the Righteous Alliance besieging the Misty Mountain Villa had to cover their faces. They were indeed afraid that the people of the Misty Sect would recognize them because many of them were not disciples of the Righteous Alliance. Perhaps even more of them were lay disciples of the Dalan Temple. Understanding this, Peng could not help but feel disheartened. He cupped his hands and said, "Elder Chong Shang, why are you not at the Dalan Temple but at my Misty Peak? If I knew that you were coming, I would definitely open the door to the Misty School to welcome you. Why did you have to go through so much trouble to come up from behind the mountain?" The elder Chong Shang clasped his hands together and said, "Almsgiver, I haven't seen you for a long time. Your martial arts skills have become extraordinary, to be congratulated." However, he did not mention to him the Misty School Abbess Jing-yi to the Dalan Temple to meet to greet the Abbess Jing. The old voice of the Dalan Temple rang out, "No need for formalities, Peng, your martial arts are really good." Peng sneered in his heart. The 2 of them kept mentioning his martial arts. If he still did not know what they were here for, he would not be worthy of being the head of the Misty School. However, since the 2 of them did not mention it, Peng could only pretend that he did not know. He turned to Zhang San and said, "Alliance Master Zhang, our competition is not over yet. It just so happens that there are 2 seniors here. How about you and I have a good competition?" Zhang San led the 2 vice leaders of the Righteous Alliance to challenge the 3 from the Misty School. He originally wanted to test them, but he did not expect to go for wool and come home shorn. The leaders of the 2 super sects did not appear in time, causing one of his vice leaders to become a cripple and the other to be injured or dead. He himself also almost died at Peng's hands. Now that he saw Peng challenge him again, how could he still participate? He only smiled and said, "Alliance Master let's not beat around the bush. Since things have come to this point, let's be frank. Alliance Master's Misty School's strength has increased too quickly in the past few years. Even Alliance Master and the Misty School's 6 tigers have high martial arts. Don't you think you should give us an explanation?" Peng said, "This is the result of my Misty School's hard work. If Alliance Master Zhang is interested, you can join our Misty School and experience it for yourself." Zhang San sneered and said, "Hee, Peng, you're still stubborn. The secret plains matter has long been spread from Wanjian Peak. Do you know where the other vice leaders of the Righteous Alliance, the other elders of the Dalan Temple, and the other leaders of the Fragrance Cult went?" Peng sneered and said, "Could it be that they also went to Wanjian Peak to destroy the sect? A small Wanjian Peak can't afford such a big battle." "That's right, Wan Jian Peak alone does not need such a big battle. But what if the Tan family and Yanming Villa are also involved? O Peng's face slightly changed, but immediately returned to normal. He smiled and said, "You're right. If you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext?" Hee, Alliance Master O, do you think that the alliance of your four sects is very strong, and the news of the secret plane is very difficult to leak? But you never thought that it was because you were so cautious that the news was leaked. O Peng said, "Alliance Master Zhang, you're really boring. The other three sects are very close to my Misty School, but I don't know what you're talking about." Zhang San shook his head and said, "Alliance Master O, you don't have to deny it. You still don't know that one of the people from your four sects who went to the secret plane for the first time fled to my righteous alliance. Otherwise, how could I persuade the elders and Jingyi Nun?" O Peng frowned and said, "If Alliance Master Zhang has the leisure to tell me a story, I'm all ears. If you want to find out the truth from me, I can only say sorry." Zhang San ignored him and continued, "Leader O, I reckon that a person of great importance has a short memory. The first time your four sects went to retrieve the treasure, there was an outsider. This person was the leader of the evil tiger gang, Situ Ping." O Peng's eyebrows moved slightly. Situ Ping was brought back to the gang by Wan Jian Peak's Ma Xiangyang. Originally, Situ Ping was a meritorious person who brought you to the secret plane. He didn't covet the things in your jade bottles and only gave him some medicinal materials. In any case, you had already made an agreement. However, Wan Chengjiu was stingy and went back on his word. He only used his status as a disciple to perfunctorily restrict his freedom and sent his own disciples to seize the evil tiger gang's territory. How could he let Situ Ping feel at ease? If it weren't for Situ Ping sneaking out of the Myriad Sword Peak a few days ago and coincidentally joining our Righteous Tao Alliance, how would we know such details of such a secret? Alliance Master O, you don't need to deny it. We have already been to the secret plane and we don't want to disturb the peace of your four sections. However, the secret plane is too dangerous. Without the sheepskin scroll to enter the secret plane, my Righteous Alliance has already lost a lot of disciples. We had no choice but to use this method. I hope Alliance Master O can be magnanimous enough to forgive us." When O Peng heard this, he looked up to the sky and laughed. "Let's not talk about whether your story is true or not. Even if it is, you killed two of my junior brothers, destroyed a lot of my disciples, and destroyed a lot of my branches. With just a few words, you want my Misty School to hand over some sheepskin scroll? Aren't you too naive?" Then he turned his head and asked the leaders of the two large sects, "Two seniors, don't you think so?" At this time the masked nun Jingyi's old voice sounded again. "O Peng, you have wronged me and Elder Zhang. The Righteous Alliance's attack on your Misty School was their own action. Our two sects didn't participate. The matter of your two junior brothers was just an accident. At that time, we only wanted to capture the two of them and didn't have any intention of harming them. However, this Zhang San acted on his own initiative and killed them. This matter is what Elder Zhang Xing and I just heard about it from Elder Zhang Xing. The reason why we came up the mountain so late was to let your Misty School and the Righteous Alliance resolve this enmity first. You see, now that one of the two vice leaders of the Righteous Alliance is dead and the other is crippled, we can be considered even with the Misty School. What do you think?" Hearing Nun Jingyi's words, O Peng was startled at first. Then he looked up to the sky and laughed. "What do you think? What do you think? My two junior brothers lost their lives just like that. You all just played a trick and said that we're even. Nun, ask yourself, can we be even like this? My Misty School and Mimi's 6 Misty Tigers are no longer complete. Can we be even? Moreover, the death knot between the Misty School and the Righteous Alliance has already been formed. Only a life and death struggle can break it. Don't tell me Nun doesn't know?" Nun Jingyi didn't reply. O Peng asked again, "Nun, please tell me. Was my senior brother also killed by the Righteous Alliance?" Nun Jingyi looked at Elder Zhang Xing and said, "Hu Yuni was only seriously injured. Your Misty School lost more than half of its elite disciples. The lower-level disciples were all unharmed and have already broken out of the encirclement. Yes, Nun, thank you for holding back. I think at this time, no one in the Righteous Alliance has the strength to seriously injure my senior brother." Seeing that the Dalan Temple and Incense Religion didn't speak, O Peng turned to Zhang San and said, "Alliance leader Zhang, there is one more thing I need to ask." Zhang San was expressionless and said, "Leader Zhang, please speak." O Peng pointed to O Yan in the distance and said, "This is my younger sister. The whole Jianghu knows that she doesn't know martial arts and doesn't have the strength to truss up a chicken. But when she went south 2 years ago, she was unexpectedly attacked by people in Jianghu. I want to ask, does your righteous alliance still have the morals of Jianghu to attack a weak woman?" Hearing this, Zhang Sen smiled and said, "Leader O misunderstood. Although my righteous alliance isn't a great sect with a history of 10,000 years, we still follow the morals of Jianghu. We can't do something like bullying a weak woman. However, this matter about your younger sister, I only recently found out. I don't know if Leader Zhang is interested in hearing about it?" O Peng cupped his hands and said, "Leader Zhang, no matter how hostile we are now, I still admire your Jianghu morals of not bullying a weak woman. Elder Zhang Xing and Nun Jingyi are also here. They also heard it. I hope you can be like this as always." Zhang Sen didn't understand, but still smiled and said, "This is natural. The 2 sect leaders also know about this." O Peng asked again, "Then Leader Zhang, can you enlighten me, who is so cruel and unscrupulous to attack a defenseless woman?" Zhang San said, "This person is someone you can't even think of." Chapter 339. I didn't even think about it. O Peng was surprised and was about to speak when he heard a noise at the foot of the misty peak. He looked up and saw Zhang Chengyue, who was covered in blood, holding a long sword and leading disciples who were also covered in blood back to the top of the mountain. O Peng glanced around and found that most of the disciples who came back were female disciples of Ming Tsue Hall. Shi Niu, Wan Wenhai and Lu Yueming were not among them. Even Shi Yukuan and other hall masters were not there. O Peng's heart skipped a beat. Zhang Qingyue's pale and tired face was full of doubts, but when he saw the 3 bald monks and the woman in the palace dress, he immediately understood. He walked to O Peng and whispered, "Grandmaster, our disciples can't fight against the 3 sections. Only a few hall masters are still fighting." Shi Niu's joints were broken by an unknown monk from the Dalan temple. Junior brother Wen and junior brother Lu's Dantian were broken by the incense cult's incense hand. Most of the elite disciples were martyred, and the others were seriously injured. Most of the low-level disciples guarding the mountain were also killed by them. O Peng nodded. These were already losses. When he saw the leaders of the 2 sects, he had already expected it. These people said that they were good, but when it came to the interests of the sect, how could they be merciful? O Peng patted Zhang Chengyue on the shoulder and said, "Chengyue, you've worked hard." Then he turned to Elder Chongsheng and Nun Jingyi and said, "Is this how the 2 sects treat my Misty School? Is this what you mean by just for the secluded land? Don't the 2 sects care about the thousands of years of friendship between the 3 sects?" He seemed to know that the 2 would not answer directly, so he turned to Zhang San and asked, "Chief Zhang, you just said that the person who attacked my Huanxi mountain villa was Wan Chengjiu of Wanjian Peak?" Zhang San was shocked at first, but then he smiled and said, "Grand faction leader, you're really good at seeing through things. It's this guy. I learned from Situ Ping that Wan Chengjiu wanted to monopolize the resources in the secret plane, so he was blinded by greed and wanted to use your sister to threaten Grand faction leader to hand over the sheepskin scroll. He also used the same method to deal with the other 2 families, but he didn't succeed. Sigh, brat, you're not worth my time. If it weren't for this bastard's wild ambition, how could there be today's outcome? Big gang leader is mistaken. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. You can hide it for a while, but you can't hide it forever. It seems like Big Gang leader has admitted to the existence of this secret plane. Then, I ask Big Gang leader to hand over the sheepskin scroll. Is there something wrong with Alliance head Zhang's ears? Did you hear me say that I have a sheepskin scroll in my hands? What part of your body did you hear? I'm still wondering why Wan Chengjiu of Myriad Swords Peak would attack my sister so shamelessly. You. Zhang San pointed at O Peng, not knowing what to say. Me, what about me? You killed my brothers, destroyed my sect, and now you want me to submit to you? Ha ha ha, how about this, Alliance head Zhang, you and I will fight to the death. If I lose to you, I will tell you what you want to know. What do you think? This. Zhang San muttered to himself for a moment, but didn't say anything else. He had already fought once, and his hand had been injured by the invisible sword Qi. If he agreed now, his two backers would have a reason not to interfere. At that time, not only would Misty Sect be destroyed, the Righteous Alliance would also be captured. In any case, I'm not the only one who wants the sheepskin scroll. Why should I charge in front? I've been paying attention to the sheepskin scroll of Myriad Swords Peak for a long time. I've already arranged for elite men. This time with the help of the two sects, it will be easy for me to get it. Whoever gets the last one will get it. I'll just watch the show. Besides, I was tricked by the Dalan Temple and Incense Cult, and lost 2 of my Vice Alliance heads. Why would I be stupid enough to charge in front? After thinking, Zhang Sen stood to the side with his hands crossed, quietly watching the development of the situation. At this time, the sun had already set in the west. In the distance, the sky was filled with red clouds. It was a beautiful scene. The peak of Misty Peak was whistling, the trees were trembling, and clothes were fluttering. However, no one on the peak was in the mood to look at such a scene. They all looked at the middle-aged man in white with a calm expression. Seeing O Peng's roguish answer, the masked nun Jingyi said, "O Peng, if you answer like this, it won't be interesting. You're forcing me." O Peng's expression changed slightly. He closed his eyes for a moment and smiled. "Nun, you're thinking too much. When the nest is overturned, no egg will remain intact. How can I worry too much at this time? If Nun Rushi wants to test my martial arts, I won't dare to refuse." Nun Jingyi laughed and said, "Your master was no match for me when he was young. Although your invisible sword chi is powerful, it is no match for me. How can I bully the weak?" Then she raised her voice and said, "Rupying, come out." Rupying? As soon as the 2 words came out, the whole Misty Peak fell into silence. Everyone looked at each other, wondering what Nun Jingyi was up to. However, O Peng and gang leader O's faces were a little pale. Seeing that no one answered, Nun Jingyi raised her voice again and said angrily, "Rupying, don't you want to recognize me as your master?" Then, a middle-aged beautiful woman with a pale face walked out slowly from the Misty School. She came to Nun Jingyi and bowed deeply. "Rupying greets master." In an instant, the whole Misty Peak fell into silence. Even people's breathing was almost inaudible. That was because everyone was astonished. This middle-aged beautiful woman was the wife of gang leader O of the Misty School. She was the wife of gang leader O who had never interfered in the affairs of the Misty School. O Yan's phoenix eyes widened. Her small mouth opened and closed, as if she was calling for her sister-in-law. Li Jian and Lu Qingyang were surprised at first. Then they seemed to have realized something. Their eyes were full of complicated emotions. Zhang Chengyue and his disciples were also extremely surprised. Their eyes showed confusion, resentment, hatred, jealousy, and so on. Only O Peng's eyes were clear as if he had known it all along. Nun Jingyi said, "Rupying, stand aside." Then she said to O Peng, "Gang leader O, you are the son-in-law of Fragrant Sect. How can I not know your every move? You'd better take out the sheepskin scroll and come to Fragrance Peak to be your live-in son-in-law." Rupying stood up and looked at O Peng from afar. She said frankly, "Husband, you have to believe me. Since I married into the Misty School, I have never sent a word back to Fragrant Sect." O Peng smiled and said, "Actually, I already knew everything before you married into the Misty School. You never asked me about the affairs of the Misty School. You never stepped into the meeting hall. How can I not know your good intentions? It's just that I always had a question that I wanted to ask you. I thought I would never have the chance, but now, I can finally ask." Rupying's face turned a little red. She asked, "You and I are husband and wife. Why can't we be honest with each other? Husband, just say it." O Peng said, "Actually, it's very simple. I just want to know. That year by the side of Lake Chui, under the willow tree, you and I met by chance. Was it Fragrant Sect's arrangement, or was it a gift from the heavens?" Hearing this, Rupying's face was filled with happiness. Her forehead was slightly red. She said, "That was my first time in Jianghu. It was just a simple trip. I naturally remember that day at the end of spring. Under the drizzle, you and I met under the willow tree. You actually guessed that my surname was Yang, and not Lu. At that moment, I knew that you would be my life's protection. It was only after that that I told my master. If husband doesn't believe me, You can ask me face to face. Before Opang could speak, Nanjingyi snorted and said, "This old woman also didn't expect that my most beloved disciple would be able to catch the rich husband of the Misty School on her first trip. However, you were only the third disciple of the Misty School at that time. This old woman didn't have the ability of divination. How would I know that you would become the head of the Misty School? A married daughter is like spilled water. This saying is right. Rupiang's elbow has always been towards your Misty School. Unexpectedly, you didn't even send a single message back to your sect. It's a waste of my love for you." Yang Rupiang whispered, "Master, since I'm married to my husband, I naturally have to prioritize him. As for the matter of the sect, I've already made it clear before I left. If I know of it, I will definitely report it. If I don't know, how can I report it? Hi, you little girl. How can I not know what you're thinking? If it wasn't for this today, why would I call you out? You two are a happy couple. As your master, I'm also happy to see you too." Nanjingyi sighed. The conversation between the master and disciple wasn't hidden from anyone. At first, everyone in the Misty School was resentful of this Misty School gang leader's wife who usually didn't show her face. However, now that they heard it, their gang leader already knew of this matter. Moreover, the gang leader's wife and the gang leader's wife also met by chance before they found out about each other's identities. This was far from a trap or a conspiracy. Moreover, when they thought about how the gang leader's wife had never said a word about the sex matters for the past few decades, they understood what the gang leader's wife was thinking. As a result, their previous disdain had long since disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by envy of the love between the two and worry about their current situation. After Opang received a satisfactory answer, a gratified smile appeared in his eyes. He bowed deeply to Nanjingyi and said, "Actually, this son-in-law has always wanted to pay his respects to Nanjingyi, but he never had the chance. Today, I'll take this opportunity to formally pay my respects to you." "Haha, Opang, after today, our family will have plenty of opportunities to talk. There's no need to rush." After Opang finished bowing, he smiled and said, "This son-in-law still has a matter to ask Nanjingyi. But I don't know how to deal with this son-in-law." "About this?" Nanjingyi was a little hesitant. Chapter 340. At this time, the elder next to him put his palms together and said in a low voice, "Leader O, since things have already come to this, there is no point in saying more. Earlier, Nanjingyi has already said a lot of good things about the Misty School. My Dalan Temple and the Righteous Alliance have also made a lot of concessions. However, since the Misty School has already come to this point, do you think it still has any meaning to exist? In fact, Nanjingyi and I don't want the Misty School to bleed too much. We also don't want to take too many lives. Your junior brother's matter was only an accident. It was done deliberately by some people. I can guarantee that it was not the intention of the Dalan Temple or the Cult of Fragrance." Opang smiled and said, "Thank you, Elder, for your kindness." The Elder continued, "However, for you, Leader O, there is only one path you can take. Please speak. That is to cripple your own martial arts and take the remaining disciples of the Misty School to join the Cult of Fragrance and be your free son-in-law." Once this was said, everyone was shocked. Only Openg's eyelids didn't move. He smiled and said, "It seems that Elder thinks highly of me. However, I don't know if there is any other path I can take." "No. As early as your Misty School's elder who took the disciples to escape from the back of the mountain, you already had no other choice." Opang suddenly understood. Indeed, the back of the mountain was guarded by the Dalan Temple and the Cult of Fragrance. How could they let his senior brother and a group of low-level disciples escape? It turned out that it was just a compromise. Of course, he still had another path to take. With the Misty School's Qinggong, ethereal steps, even if he faced the former #1 in Jianghu, he still had a chance to escape. However, would he do that? Hearing this, Yang Rupiang begged Nanjingyi in a low voice. Nanjingyi just sighed and shook her head slightly. Opang looked up to the sky and laughed. He said to the Misty School's disciples, "Brothers and sisters of the Misty School, I am not talented enough to lead the Misty School to glory. Instead, I have brought disaster to the Misty School. I have mistreated you." After he finished speaking, he bowed deeply to the people of the Misty School and continued, I hope that you can use this crisis to see the dangers of the martial world and see clearly who the culprit behind the destruction of my Misty School is. I hope that one day, you can once again rebuild Misty and take back Misty Heights. All the ethereal disciples had tears in their eyes. Xianxia took half a step forward and said, Master, where there's life, there's hope. Didn't you just educate your disciple? Peng patted his shoulder and smiled. I know. Chengyu, I've made things difficult for you. Then, Peng raised his eyes to look at Li Jian and Lu Qingyang. He knew that he had been predetermined. How could these two outstanding martial arts brothers escape? Then, Peng looked at Yan who was standing in the distance. Peng's eyes were full of love as he smiled and nodded. Finally, his eyes returned to Yang Ruping. He smiled and said, Ruping, I really didn't expect that they would prepare such a happy ending for us. Even if we don't grow old together, we can't. Husband. Yang Ruping cried. Peng continued, Ruping, in the future, my Misty School will rely on you to take care of me. I hope you can promise me a few things. Yang Ruping nodded. Peng said, I only have one sister, Yan. You know this. We have depended on each other since childhood. I hope you will treat her well in the future. This Huanxi Manor is Yan property. It does not belong to the Misty School. Please uphold justice. Yang Ruping's eyes were wet. She nodded slightly. Peng said, From now on, your husband will be a cripple. He will no longer be able to protect the disciples of the Misty School. Even if he joins the Misty School, he will be bullied. I hope you can hold up the world for them. Yang Ruping's tears fell. She nodded desperately. Peng said, One last thing. Ruping, after knowing your identity, I have been afraid of such an ending. I was afraid that we would turn against each other because of the power behind us. So, I didn't dare to have children. Now it seems that this is good. You must promise me that you will take care of yourself. If there is a chance, you will find your own happiness. Yang Ruping's tears fell like rain. She shook her head desperately and shouted, Husband, don't think too much. After saying that, she rushed over recklessly. However, it was too late. Peng's mouth was already bleeding. When Yang Ruping ran to the front of Peng, she only heard Peng's last words in this world. I have guessed the process and the ending, but this ending came too early. Ruping, it's good to meet you. After that, he closed his eyes. Peng actually broke his own meridians and died. The mountain wind blew. Peng's face was serene, as if there was happiness on his face. His feet stood firmly on the high mountain peak. He stood firm. Big brother. Yan saw this scene from afar. How could she endure it? Her eyes turned black and she fainted. Master, Zhang Chengyue, who was the closest, screamed. He then smiled sadly and said, I know the pain in my heart. Master, wait for me. I will go with you. After that, he put the sword in his hand to his neck and killed himself. Li Jian and Lu Qingyang saw this and were shocked. They shouted, Fourth brother. Then the two of them raised their swords and axes, and attacked Zhang San in unison, saying, Old Zhang, leave your head behind. When Zhang San saw this, he hurriedly dodged. What a joke. Old Fifth Lu was naturally not his opponent. In addition, there was also Li Jian who could use sword light. He could only dodge. His old life was more important. Things like face were all nonsense. Zhang Sen dodged and shouted, Elder, help me. Nun Jingyi, save me. Nun Jingyi waved her hand. The three consecrators beside her stood up and surrounded the two in a few moves. They began to fight. Li Jian's sword light was rare and Lu Qingyang's axe was powerful. However, they were not invincible. Not long after, they were forced to reveal many flaws by the three former Jianghu's number one. Fortunately, the two had already thrown their lives to the back of their minds. Their attacks were often suicidal. For a while, they were not defeated. The elder frowned and whispered a few words. Monk Chongxing and Monk Chonggung waved their long sleeves and also joined the fight. When the two elders of the Dalan Temple joined the fight, the situation changed immediately. Usually, the three people who were once famous in Jianghu and the two who were now famous in Jianghu would shake the whole Jianghu with a stomp of their feet. It had never been seen in Jianghu that these 5 people joined hands to deal with 2 people. The 2 brothers from the Misty School could be considered to have gained some face. Li Jian and Lu Qingyang had long given up their lives. Why would they be afraid of 2 more monks? After a few moves, under the attacks of the 5 people, they were almost powerless to fight back. The 2 looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. Ha ha! The 2 laughed. They gathered their strength in their palms and suddenly slapped their own foreheads. Unfortunately, under the joint attack of these 5 people, they didn't even have the chance to kill themselves. The old man in the linen robe suddenly rushed forward, and with a quick move, he actually sealed the meridians and acupoints of the 2 people, making them unable to move at all. But things didn't end there. When the 3 turned around and returned to the side of Nanjing Yi, the 2 monks from the Dalan temple attacked again. One of them punched Li Jian's dantian. Blood spurted out from Li Jian's mouth. His dantian, which had been refined for many years, was broken at this moment. The other monk's 10 fingers danced like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. It didn't take long for him to caress all the joints in Lu Qingyang's body. Lu Qingyang instantly collapsed on the ground. This was Jianghu, pure Jianghu. When they saw this, many of the injured disciples standing around them could no longer remain standing. They had just lost their beloved sect master, and when they saw the 2 elders screaming in pain, they rushed forward and used their bodies to protect the 2 elders who were already crippled to the point that they could not be any more crippled. They would forever be the elders in their hearts. Looking at the disciples who were looking at him with eyes burning with anger, Xianxia smiled. If looks could kill, the first one to be killed on Misty Peak would be him. But can looks kill? Of course not, so Xianxia spoke. Sect masters, although Peng has been punished, the whereabouts of the sheepskin scroll are still unknown. What should we do? I ask the 2 of you to support me in capturing all the disciples of the Misty School and torture them one by one, especially her. Xianxia's finger pointed at Yan, who had just woken up. Her eyes were shining with determination. Before he could finish his words, the sound of a sword clanging could be heard. Yang Ruping pulled out the sword from Peng's waist and placed it on her neck. She shouted, "Master, Yan is my husband's younger sister. She has no strength to truss up a chicken. Your disciple has just promised to protect her for life. How can I let others bully her now? And these disciples of the Misty School are all my subordinates. Your disciple has to fulfill my husband's dying wish and protect them under my wings. If Master agrees to this bastard's unreasonable request, your disciple will not be able to face my husband who has just closed his eyes. Only by following my husband can I be at ease." With the sword on her neck, Yang Ruping's left hand held onto Peng's body, which was gradually turning cold. Her right hand was incomparably firm. The sharp edge of the sword had already left a bloody mark on her skin. No one doubted her words. If she didn't get a definite answer, she would definitely not hesitate to fulfill her promise. That promise was, willing to be lovebirds in heaven, willing to be intertwined branches on earth? That promise was, hand in hand and grow old together? That promise was, live on the same bed and die in the same cave? A simple sword could be fulfilled. But, a simple sword, could it solve all the problems? Nanjing Yi seemed to care a lot about her last disciple. She said hurriedly, "Ruping, don't be so impulsive. I will also listen to Peng's words. Don't worry, I will make the decision for you." Hearing this, Yang Ruping was slightly relieved. She took down the sword but did not return it to the sheath. She still held it in her hand. Xianxia was still unwilling. He asked, "Nanjing Yi, what do you think we should do?" Nanjing Yi did not answer him directly. Instead she asked softly, Yan, you don't have to be afraid. Let me ask you, do you know about the sheepskin scroll in your brother's hands?" Chapter 341. The delicate Yan was very determined at this time. She bowed from afar and said loudly, "Master, my elder brother didn't tell me anything about the sheepskin scroll." "Good." Master Jing Yi nodded and turned to Xianxia. "Leader Zhang, did you hear that clearly?" "I understand. Master, Peng must be afraid of implicating his sister, so he may not give the sheepskin scroll to Yan for safekeeping. However, I think Peng just said something about the Huanxi mountain villa. Do you think he will put the sheepskin scroll there?" Yang Ruping said angrily, "Leader Zhang, my husband said very clearly just now that the Huanxi Mountain Villa belongs to Oyen, not the Misty School. I will protect my sister and won't let you harass the Huanxi Mountain Villa. In addition, you keep saying that the Misty School has a sheepskin scroll in their hands and that it was a message from Situ Ping of the evil tiger gang. Where is this so-called Situ Ping?" Zhang San said. "This? Situ Ping's matter is absolutely true, but she suddenly disappeared some time ago. Our righteous alliance has sent many disciples, but we haven't received any news yet." "What? Alliance Master Zhang, why didn't you inform us earlier about what we were waiting for?" Nun Jingyi and the elders were both angry. Please calm down. It's not that I didn't want to report it, but the arrow has already been knocked. I'm afraid. Afraid that we won't act according to the plan? Alliance head Zhang, you're too scheming. Nun Jingyi said coldly. I don't dare. Let's talk about this another time. The key now is the sheepskin scroll in the Misty School. Master, we can't guarantee that the sheepskin scroll is hidden in O Peng's body. You! Yang Ruping raised her sword and pointed it at Zhang San. If there was an invisible sword qi, it would have already pierced through him. Nun Jingyi thought for a while and said, Ruping, don't let your emotions affect your decisions. I will help you. However, since the three sects came here with such great fanfare, if we don't get to the bottom of this, it will be hard to explain to anyone. I'll give you half a day's time. No matter what you find, you must evacuate. From now on, your righteous alliance is not allowed to take a single step into Huanxi Manor. Alright, you've heard from O Peng that Huanxi Manor is not a part of the Misty School, which means it's not part of our plan. You can't touch a single blade of grass, a single tree, a single person or a single animal in Huanxi Manor. Otherwise, don't blame me for falling out with you. Zhang Sen pondered for a moment and said, Nun Jingyi is right. We'll do as Nun says. After saying that, he nodded at Yu Zhanfei. Yu Zhanfei turned around and went down the misty peak. On the other side, Changgung of the Dalan Temple and one of the consecrators of the incense cult also followed. Then the elder put his palms together and said in a low voice, Nun Jingyi, what Nun Zhang said makes sense. There are many disciples in the Misty School. It's hard to guarantee that someone is hiding the sheepskin scroll. Hearing the elder's words, Nun Jingyi smiled and said, Elder, you worry too much. I won't say anything about the Luo Shui gang. When your Dalan Temple takes over, please pay more attention and don't lose track of the sheepskin scroll. Since the disciples of the Misty School are accepted by my incense cult, they will naturally be under my management. When they come down from the Misty Peak, they will change into my incense cult's clothes. My disciples will inspect them one by one. If the elder is still worried, you can also send people to participate. Also, O Peng's body will be changed and placed in the coffin. Elder, you can recite sutras for him. The elder smiled and said, That's good. Then he turned to Zhang San and said, Nun Zhang, you have to work even harder to take over the Misty Mountain Villa and the Misty Peak. If you find the sheepskin scroll, please inform us as soon as possible. This year's time to enter the forest is approaching. Our three sects still need to make more preparations. Zhang San's face showed unconcealable excitement. He cupped his hands and said, That's right. Master and Nun don't need to worry. This one will definitely worry. I hope that our three sects can find a way to enter the secret plane soon, so that our three sects' strength can be further improved. Others were the meat on the chopping block, while others were the meat on the chopping block. In the blink of an eye, the incense cult, the Dalan Temple and the Alliance of the Righteous Tao had settled the Misty School's 10,000 years of inheritance. As the master of the Misty School, the disciples of the Misty School could only watch from the side and listen. They were at the mercy of others without the slightest bit of argument. Even Yang Ruping, who was now the barrier, could only wipe her tears and endure in order to complete her husband's unfulfilled wish. At this time, half of the blood-red sunset in the sky was still exposed outside the mountain. The blood-red glow was like the blood dripping from the Misty Peak. When the sun set, there was no trace of people on the Misty Peak. The mountain wind only whimpered and whistled. No one knew that the whole mountain had changed owners in one day. Another sect with 10,000 years of inheritance had been annihilated in the cruel Jianghu. The stars have changed, mulberry fields have changed, and the sea has changed. Chu Yunfei escaped from the back of the mountain with Hu Yuni that day. He did not know the details after that. Many of the details were heard from Jianghu later. However, after Chu Yunfei finished, Xianxia sighed and sighed again and again. She only regretted that she was not at the top of the Misty Peak that day. But he forgot that at that time, no matter how good his martial arts were now, he only knew that at that time, he could be beaten from the top to the bottom of the mountain with one punch. How could he have a chance to stand out? Everything had to be done with strength. Courage and hot-bloodedness were the only things that mattered. Under the bright moonlight, Zhang Xiaohua played with a small sword in her hand. She asked with concern, "What about the surviving Misty School disciples?" Chu Yunfei looked at the moon hanging in the sky and said, "I heard that they went with the wife of the first sect master to the incense cult. A new Misty Hall was added to the incense cult. The wife of the first sect master became the hall master and protected all the Misty Hall disciples." Wife of the first sect master? Do you still recognize her as the wife of the first sect master? Yes, of course. She and the first sect master are in love. She did not marry into the Misty School for the benefit of the sect. She even protected the surviving disciples when the Misty School was in danger. Why don't we respect her? Even the Great Elder said the same thing. First Elder? Oh right, it's Elder Hu. I seem to have vaguely seen him before. Is he all right? Alas, the First Elder was seriously injured and almost lost his cultivation. Otherwise, how could the Dalan Temple and the incense cult let him go? Now he is barely holding on. He is afraid that if something happens to him, the Misty School's disciples outside will be scattered. Alas, the Misty School is already like this. Do you still think that you are from the Misty School? Although the Misty School is no longer in the Misty Peak and the Misty Heights, the Misty School will always be in our hearts. We will always be the disciples of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. She also had deep feelings for the Misty School. Thinking of Peng's words, it seemed like it was only yesterday. Unfortunately, now they were separated by life and death and could never see each other again. Even Zhang Chengyue, who was very good to her, had already entered the Yellow Springs. Zhang Xiaohua could not help but think of the scene when he gave her the banknotes. By the way, I forgot to ask. What's the situation in the Huanxi Villa? No one in the Huanxi Villa has moved. Even the guards are still the same. But the incense cult has taken over. Everything is the same as before. Alas, is Miss O still in the villa? How is that possible? Although the Huanxi Villa is still Miss O's, how can she establish herself in the villa without the protection of the Grand Master? She is now following the Grand Master's wife in the incense cult. Then, what about Qiu Tong? Brother Zhang, it seems that you are really from the Huanxi Villa. You are so familiar with it. Nonsense. It's the real deal. I guarantee it's genuine. Except for Miss O, I don't know about the others. Qiu Tong may be in the Huanxi Villa or in the incense cult. After talking for so long, where are you hiding now? In. Speaking of this, Chu Yunfei glanced at Zhang Xiaohua vigilantly. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and then understood. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Alas, Brother Chu, I was wrong. You don't need to answer me. I'm not the Righteous Alliance. Where you are has nothing to do with me. By the way, I want to ask you, where is the incense cult? Or where is the Misty Hall?" Brother Zhang, I'm sorry. You saved my life, so I shouldn't hide anything from you. But after all, this is related to the survival of the Misty School. Please forgive me. It doesn't matter. I was just asking. Zhang Xiaohua looked up at the moon. It was getting late. She got up and said, "Brother Chu, I want to ask you one last question." Chu Yunfei smiled and said, "Just say it. Do you know where the incense cult is?" Well, Chu Yunfei bitterly smiled and said, "The incense cult has always been mysterious. They rarely appear in Jianghu. How would I know where they are? Even Zhang San of the Righteous Alliance wouldn't know." Ah! Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. Is the Misty School and the incense cult so complicated that you don't know where they are? Chu Yunfei bitterly smiled. I'm just an ordinary disciple. How would I know? Maybe the Grand Elder would know. Oh right, there's a rumor in Jianghu that the incense cult is on the moon. I don't know where this came from. On the moon. Zhang Xiaohua looked up at the moon and smiled. She was already at the 6th level of qi refining, and could be considered a member of the Immortal sect. But she still couldn't fly. How could the incense cult be on the moon? However, if she wanted to find her second brother, she had to find the incense cult. The only person who might know the location of the incense cult was the Misty School's Grand Elder Hu Yuni. What should I do? If Chu Yunfei doesn't let down his guard, how can I find Grand Elder Hu? But I can't tell anyone about my background, so it's difficult. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua's eyes lit up. She smiled and said, Senior Chu, there's something I need to trouble you with. Tell me, I'll listen first. I would like to trouble you to go back and ask Great Elder Hu if he knows the address of the fragrant religion. If he knows, can I trouble Senior Chu to tell me the address? Ha! You want to go to the incense cult? Is that Zhang Xiaohu your brother? Yes, Zhang Xiaohu is my brother. We haven't seen each other for 4 or 5 years. I want to see the incense cult with my own eyes. What if you can't find it? Chu Yunfei frowned. Zhang Xiaohua had a harmless look on his face. He shrugged his shoulders and spread out his hands. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Please vote for me. Thank you. Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The newest, fastest, and most popular series is Qidian's original. Chapter 342. Chu Yunfei frowned when he heard this. He thought that Zhang Xiaohua would gnash his teeth or even fly into a rage, but Zhang Xiaohua's reaction was far beyond his imagination. Could it be? Chu Yunfei was a little hesitant. In fact, Zhang Xiaohua had already mentally prepared herself before Chu Yunfei spoke. After talking for so long, she already had a plan in mind. Moreover, Zhang Xiaohua had lived alone on the deserted island for 4 years and had matured a long time ago. It would be strange if she was still so hot-blooded. Since Chu Yunfei did not want to tell Zhang Xiaohua where the Misty School was hiding, and Zhang Xiaohua did not want others to know where her home was, of course, she had to find another place. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua said, Senior brother Chu, of course you won't go to Pingyang City. You see, not far from here, there is a town called Songning Town by the sea. Do you know of it? Chu Yunfei frowned. It seemed that this young man wanted him to go to Songning Town. Although he did not know where Songning Town was, could it be a trap? However, after thinking for a while, he felt relieved. With this young man's martial arts, it would be easy for him to take him down now. Why would he go through so much trouble? Why would he go to Songning Town to set up a trap for him? Chu Yunfei cupped his hands and said, Little brother, please tell me. Although I don't know where Songning Town is, since it is not far from here in the east, it is extremely easy to find. Since little brother has saved my life tonight, I should be able to help little brother inquire about some information. Zhang Xiaohua said, Then thank you, senior brother Chu. If you can get the address of the fragrant cult from Elder Hu, please go to the south of Songning Town and find a scabby boy. His family is very poor and doesn't live well. It should be easy to find him. I don't know the specific location. By the way, his name is Xiaohua Ji. Xiaohua Ji? Chu Yunfei was stunned. Why was there another Xiaohua Ji? Was this name very popular this year? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, What a coincidence. It's the next name. What else could Chu Yunfei say? You can just say that you're my senior brother wherever you go. Just tell me the address of the fragrant religion. You don't have to tell me anything else. Is that okay? Chu Yunfei pondered for a moment and said with a smile, Didn't I just say that little brother saved my life? How could I forget? This isn't something that requires me to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. How can I not agree? It's just that I've just come out this year, and I've already encountered so many things. This time, I might not be able to come out so easily. However, little brother, you don't have to worry. It's just a message. Anyone will do. If I can't come out, I'll let the other brothers do it for me. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was overjoyed and said, Thank you, senior martial brother Chu. Chu Yunfei repeatedly said that he didn't dare. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the sky and saw that it was getting late. She cupped her hands and said, Senior Marshal Brother Chu, the night is still long. It's a good time to hurry up. I'm in a hurry to go home, so I can't send you off. Please forgive me. When Chu Yunfei heard this, he also agreed. He said with a smile, I also have the same idea. Then let's part here. I don't dare to forget the kindness of saving my life. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay it. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and used her qinggong to go up the mountain. She turned around and waved her hand at Chu Yunfei. Then she jumped onto the David's deer and left. Chu Yunfei was not in a hurry. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua leave, he took his time to clean up and bandage all the wounds on his body. Then he walked to the 3 corpses that Zhang Xiaohua had just killed. Using his hands, he lifted up their stiff heads and carefully examined the sword marks on the 3 corpses. His face was once again filled with shock. He squatted on the ground and pondered for a long time before standing up with a serious face. He turned around to leave, but after taking a few steps, he hesitated and turned back. He bent down and took out the items on the 3 corpses. Then he used his uninjured hand to carry the 3 corpses to a hidden place. He took off their clothes and used the sword he picked up to stab the heads and necks of the corpses a few times. Only then did he stand up and use his qinggong to fly in another direction. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was sitting cross-legged in a tree hole in the distance. She smiled in the darkness. With her divine sense, where could she not see clearly? In her divine sense, Chu Yunfei flew for a while, looked around and listened carefully. Then he went in another direction. Zhang Xiaohua smiled again and withdrew her divine sense. She took out some primeval stones and closed her eyes to meditate. As for Chu Yunfei, after walking for a long time, he looked at the stars in the sky and determined the direction. Then he chose a new direction and went in another direction. Luckily Zhang Xiaohua did not have any thoughts of following him. Otherwise, she would have been played by this disciple of the ethereal sect that she had just saved. After a night of silence, Zhang Xiaohua woke up in the morning. She went out of the tree hole and breathed in some fresh air. Then she began her morning practice. Yes, it was naturally the Big Dipper magical fist. After 18 rounds of the fist art, the 9 streams of bone-honing energy flowed through the bones in her body. Zhang Xiaohua faintly felt that her fist art seemed to be showing signs of leveling up. This was a feeling that she did not have when she practiced the Big Dipper magical fist in the past. Zhang Xiaohua thought for a while. Could it be related to the body odor in the tea house a few days ago? Since she could not think of a reason, she could only scratch her head. However, wasn't it a good thing to be able to improve? Zhang Xiaohua grinned. She lifted her leg and got on the David's deer. Without waiting for him to speak, the David's deer galloped forward. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua laughed like a happy person. Her laughter shocked many birds that had gone to look for insects to eat. In the next few days, there was nothing much to talk about. Zhang Xiaohua was in a hurry. However, there were a few things that were quite troublesome. You say, this person is too much. I'm just traveling alone. I don't have any bags with me and I don't wear any gorgeous clothes. Why would someone want to take advantage of me? Zhang Xiaohua thought about this from time to time. Although the route map that Ji Xiaohua gave him was basically the official road, there were still some secluded places on the official road. There were still some unsafe factors. In Zhang Xiaohua's opinion, he was just an ordinary country boy. Yes, he was riding a mule. How could he be liked by people? However, there were still a few ignorant boorish people who actually asked him to pay for the road. They even took a fancy to Huan Huan and wanted to sell it or kill it to eat. Zhang Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was not worth it to smash them into meat paste. However, if he let them go like this, who knew if they would rob ordinary passers-by like him in the future? By the way, who knew if they had done such things like robbing and killing before? There were too many injustices in this world. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua could not care less about all of them. However, since they dared to bully him, how could he let them go? Therefore, whenever he encountered such a situation, Zhang Xiaohua would give them 2 tight slaps. First, he would slap the teeth out of their mouths. Regardless of whether they had any difficulties or not, would they have a reason to rob you? Then, he carefully looked at this person's face. He looked passable and seemed like a kind person. All right, brother, take out the money and other things from your pocket, and this young master will spare your life. Then make a vicious oath, and if this young master hears it well, I will kick you away. Next time, don't mess around. Even if you want to rob, find a fat head with big ears, or a corrupt official or something like that. You still dare to argue, saying that this person has bodyguards? You only know how to bully the weak. I will teach you a lesson. Let's see if you still dare to go down the wrong path. If you look at him, he doesn't look like a kind person. Moreover, his actions are also vicious. Well, brother, first take out the money and other things in your arms. Then, if you want me to spare your life, well, no problem. Kacha, I will use a small sword to cut off your thumbs. Let's see if you have any way to raise a sword in the future. Cough, cough. Although it was said that one could not judge a book by its cover, perhaps there were people who were wicked beyond redemption who had a likable face. However, I don't have the time to distinguish between them, right? Sorry, I only judge a book by its cover. Xianxia could only comfort herself like this. When it came to judging a book by its cover, not only was Xianxia like this, but other people were also like this. Why? Wasn't it because of the mule that Xianxia was riding on that had a lot of its fur rotted? When it came to using a mule to carry things or drive a carriage, people had seen many of them. However, people who traveled on horseback were all riding horses. Even if a shepherd boy rode an ox, this person was just herding the ox. Moreover, the shepherd boy looked childish and cute. Riding on him would make people feel comfortable. This country boy was not young anymore. He actually rode an ugly mule on the road and swaggered through the streets with his head held high. It was as if he was riding on a handsome horse. He even waved a crutch in his hand from time to time. Yes, that's right. He was also holding a small stone in his hand. Please, he was not small anymore. Was he still playing with stones? With such an image, how could it not attract people's attention? In the beginning, Xianxia still felt awkward. That's right. In her divine sense, all the aunties and children on the roadside were pointing at Huan and laughing. Just thinking about it made her want to cover her face and run away. However, after a long time, she naturally turned a blind eye to it. Can't I withdraw my divine sense? Can't I close my eyes and rest my mind and draw the qi into my body? Just as she drew the qi from the vitality stone into her body and refined it, she heard the sound of horse hooves behind her. There was also the sound of the coachman scolding the horse. Without releasing her divine sense, Xianxia knew that it was another group of bodyguards protecting the carriage on the official road. Xianxia consciously patted Huan. Huan ran to the side of the road unwillingly. These four odd beasts were also strange. Not to mention the mountain road, as long as they walked on the main road, they had to walk in the middle. Otherwise, Xianxia would not have the reputation of being arrogant. Xianxia didn't know how many carriages like this in a day, so he naturally couldn't be bothered with them. When the bodyguards saw that he was tactful enough to make way for them, they also took a few more glances at his ugly Huan and waved their whips to pass. However, at this moment, Xianxia heard a bell-like laughter. Miss, quickly come and see. Quickly come and see. There's a strange kid here. He's actually riding a four odd beasts. Moreover, this kid is actually sleeping on the four odd beasts. Four odd beasts? Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. He really didn't know what Huan was. He only thought that it didn't look like a cow, a deer, a horse, or a donkey. Xianxia casually called it a four odd beasts. Now, someone actually recognized it and stopped calling Huan a mule. Xianxia couldn't help but open his eyes slightly. Chapter 343. The carriage that sped past Xianxia was a rather luxurious one. It was only slightly inferior to the one that Yan used to sit in. With a single glance, one could tell that it belonged to someone of status. There were 8 bodyguards in the front, back, left, and right of the carriage. They were all riding horses of different colors. All of them were very handsome. They looked 100 times better than Xianxia. The carriage was running very fast. However, the odd beast that Xianxia was riding was not slow either. Therefore, Xianxia could still see everything clearly. The curtain on the carriage was lifted up slightly. A round baby face peeked out from the curtain. He was looking at the carriage with a smile. Suddenly, the curtain on the other side of the window was lifted up as well. A pair of black eyes appeared. That pair of eyes looked at the ugly odd beast that Xianxia was riding. They were also full of surprise. Little Orange, the young man sitting on the odd beast is a mutant. Lower your voice. Don't disturb him. Oh, really? Xianxia was a little muffled. She thought about it carefully. Wasn't he just using his hand to cover his mouth? He really thought that he was a mutant. Then someone said in a low voice, "Miss, I think this young man looks just like Mossaner who grows vegetables in our house. He just looks very handsome. Why do you say that he is a mutant?" Little Orange, didn't I always tell you that you can't judge a book by its cover? Don't look at the young man's ordinary clothes. Have you noticed that his clothes are not ordinary? He must be wearing very rare clothes. Also think about it. Although our odd beast is not an adult yet and has a gentle temperament, is there anyone who can get close to it? Our odd beast is very alert. As long as there is any movement, it will immediately run far away. Don't even mention being ridden on its back. That's right, young Mississippi. Now that you mention it, I do remember. Last year, young Master Biao wanted to feed the 4 odd beasts some food, but the 4 odd beasts refused to eat no matter what. This made young Master Biao angry and he starved for a few days. It was almost starving to death, but it still refused to eat. In the end, when old Master Biao found out, he severely punished young Master Biao in front of the 4 odd beasts. Only then did the 4 odd beasts slowly walk away and start eating. The odd beast seems to be able to understand humans. This young man can actually subdue an adult odd beast. He really is a real person, does not show his true appearance. He even fooled me. Aya. Miss. What a pity. A pity? A soft and pleasant voice sounded. She asked curiously, "What's there to pity?" Of course it's a pity. Miss, you see, this young man's age is quite suitable for you. Moreover, his skin looks very good. It's just that his appearance is really too ordinary. He doesn't look like the handsome type. Moreover, he actually has a stick in his hand. Why isn't it a folding fan or something like that? I reckon that he doesn't even know how to recite poems or paint. Otherwise, miss, you can invite him to have a chat on the horse. Who knows, maybe there will be some kind of marriage linked by a thread. Bah, you little girl. You're really bold. You actually dare to say this to me. Is it because you're moved by love? If you like, I'll stop the car and ask about this young man's origin. I'll just let you marry him. With the name of our villa and the rich dowry that I'll give, this young man will definitely be very happy. As the 2 girls talked, they looked outside. At this time, they were already some distance away from Xianxia. Presumably, they couldn't hear the soft whispers in the carriage clearly. However, Xianxia's eyes and ears were very clear now. They were practically talking beside his ear. Hearing this, he was very depressed. He really wanted to find a ditch and see which part of him was not handsome. Then he would drown himself. Just as he was thinking, he saw that the 2 girls were looking at him. However, he didn't hear what they were saying. Xiao's heart was moved. He raised his hand and waved at the 2 girls. He smiled kindly, revealing his white teeth. The 2 girls were shocked. They hurriedly put down the curtain. Moreover, there was a light bang sound and the sound of someone crying out in pain. Presumably, someone hit their head. Could it be that this person actually heard us talking? The soft voice in the carriage said timidly. Behind the carriage on the side of the official road, Xianxia, who was riding on the odd beast, was very pleased with himself. However, not long after he was pleased with himself, he saw the carriage gradually moving away. He suddenly patted his head and shouted, "Oh, I forgot one thing." After saying that, he patted Huan's head. The odd beast immediately sped up and chased after them. Huan's feet didn't have horseshoes, so she ran very lightly. It wasn't until she was about to catch up with the carriage that the bodyguards behind them noticed. Seeing that the young man they had just seen had caught up, the bodyguards all showed vigilant expressions. When Xianxia saw this, he called out loudly, "Miss on the carriage, greetings. I have a question to ask. Please stop for a moment and let's talk." "Oh, miss, that young man really caught up with us. How did he know that we were sitting in the carriage? Oh, he really heard us talking. It's all your fault. What should we do? Could it be that he's here to judge?" The girl was anxious. Hearing this, Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Do I have to?" He really wanted to release his divine senses to take a look inside the carriage, but after all, there were two girls sitting in it. No matter what, he had to avoid some taboos, right? Even thieves have morals. He was also a chi refinement warrior of the Immortal Tao. How could he be so unprincipled? The girl in the carriage didn't say anything. The bodyguards slowed down their horses slowly, and the carriage naturally came to a stop. The leader, a man with extremely thick eyebrows, turned his horse over and shouted, "That brat you, what's the matter?" Xianxia cupped his fists and said, "Brother, I have an extremely simple question to ask the girl in the carriage. Please do me a favor." The man immediately put his hand on the hilt of the knife at his waist and asked vigilantly, "How did you know that the person in the carriage is a girl?" Xianxia smiled and said, "Just now when you passed by me, the person in the carriage opened the curtain and I accidentally saw it." At this moment the soft and pleasant voice in the carriage said, "Young master, it was this little girl who spoke rudely and hurt you. Please forgive me. This little girl apologizes." "Spoke insolently? What did you say about me? Are you scolding me?" Xianxia looked innocent. "Well." The girl in the carriage was speechless. Yes, she apologized as soon as she arrived. What kind of path was this? "Yes, my miss was wrong," she said, "in the future, not just now. You're disturbing our journey. Who knows, we might be annoyed and scold you later. I'm apologizing to you now, in case you start sneezing all over the place and don't know who to look for," Little Orange said impolitely. Xianxia was speechless. How could there be such an unreasonable girl? However, he was too lazy to argue with her. He continued, "If you can answer my question, you can scold me all you want today." Xianxia actually called himself a young man. It seemed that he was really holding a folding fan and wearing a scholar's headband. "Young master, please tell me. See if I can answer your question." "Oh, it's very simple. I'm just asking. What do the odd beasts usually eat?" "Fuck, what else can the odd beasts eat?" However, the odd beasts really like to eat the grass with dew in the morning. If there is a bit of yellow in it, it won't eat it. If that's the case, then thank you for answering my question. This young man thanks you. Please go on." Xianxia cupped his hands in a polite manner again. The bodyguards were confused by the two's conversation. When they saw the young man cupping his hands in farewell, they also cupped their hands casually. With a wave of their hands, the carriage continued to move forward. However, after a few steps, a scream came from the carriage. "Oh, we were fooled by this guy. Since he didn't hear us, how did he know that we know what the odd beasts eat?" After that, the curtain of the carriage was lifted again. A pair of black eyes accompanied by a thin oval face stared hatefully at the ordinary young man sitting arrogantly on the odd beasts in the distance. At this time, there was no one on the official road. That Huan leisurely ran to the center of the road again. In fact, after asking the young lady, Xianxia was a little regretful. Wasn't it a waste of time to ask? Cows eat grass, horses eat grass, donkeys eat grass, and deer also eat grass. Could it be that the odd beasts could eat meat? She was concerned about Huan and wanted it to recover as soon as possible. The key was to make it prettier as soon as possible. That was why she was anxious to seek medical treatment. However, Xianxia regretted one thing. Why didn't she release her divine sense to take a look? This girl who spoke so nicely, was she also good-looking? Sometimes, being a gentleman was also not a good feeling. Although she was unhappy, who asked her not to take a peek at that time? Now, she couldn't chase after them. Xianxia closed her eyes again. Holding two primordial stones in her hand, she continued to cultivate in a half-asleep state. In the afternoon, Xianxia found a place to rest for a while. She let Huan rest and drink some water before continuing on the road. Not long after they walked along the main road, they heard the sound of hurried horse hooves behind them. It was actually louder than the sound of the carriage in the morning. This time, without Zhang Xiaohua's signal, Huan Huan took the initiative to move to the side. Alas, this beast also knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. Sure enough, just as Huan Huan moved to the side, about 20 burly men dressed in the same clothes and riding horses rushed over from the main road. Zhang Xiaohua scanned with her divine sense and found that there were actually a few people with bulging temples. They were actually inner force experts. This group of people hurriedly passed by. The few people in the lead didn't look at Zhang Xiaohua and only treated him as a youth from the countryside. The last few people stared at him fiercely for a long time, as if trying to find a flaw. However, Zhang Xiaohua closed her eyes and looked like she was sleeping. She only released her divine sense and looked at them coldly. Those few people only retracted their gazes when they saw that there was nothing unusual and left on their horses. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.